Hello and welcome to the EXP Required podcast where we talk about Final Fantasy and other things. I am Jack, and as I'm always joined by Mol. How are you doing, Mol?
Not too bad. I know it's become customary to talk about the weather every single time. I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to complain that I had to get up early this time for recording. I'm not used to waking up before 9 a.m, but my God, I managed it today for our very special guest. We are joined today by the one, the only, Amy Mallett.
Hi, I'm so sorry I made you get up.
As you should be.
Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. Sunday lie-in as well. I figured it'd be nice because then you could go back to bed, you know, after you've done
I am looking forward to that later. You know, the nice sort of like
you'll have the whole day, you know, what a gift. Also, your intro said that you talk about Final Fantasy and other things.
Yes.
Are there other things? Or
there are other things.
Parasite Eve, Kingdom Hearts. So there are other things. It gives us a nice little get out of jail free card if one day someone says, "Hey, do you want to talk about this game?" And we're like, "Yeah, sure, let's talk about this game." But yeah, no, pretty much there are no other things. You are correct, Amy. So thank you very much for joining. It's not that early. We can convince everyone that's listening. We're at 6 o'clock
acting like it's 6 a.m. It is 11:32. Recording.
It might as well be 6 a.m.
It's Sunday. That is 6 a.m. on a Sunday. So we're going to speak today about probably lots of different things, but Final Fantasy X is going to be kind of the focus.
It sure is.
But also we're going to talk a little bit about Amy. So Amy, would you like to give yourself a brief Would you like to give yourself a brief... Bill and Ben are on the podcast too.
Speaking Albert already. I like it.
That's it, yeah. So would you like to give yourself a brief introduction and then we'll crack on?
Absolutely, yeah. So my name is Amy Mallett. I am 32 years old. I don't know why I'm starting this like I'm on some sort of...
No, this is good. Do you like long walks on the beach as well?
This is like, hi, Cilla Black. I am 32 from Northampton. Yeah, so I currently work for the Future Games Show. I am a lot of things, really. I'm a bit of a Swiss Army knife. I am a writer, I'm a presenter, I'm a social media manager and community manager as well for Future Games Show. So it is that Future Games Show, the one that's kind of like a big bi-annually event where loads of new demos and loads of new games and really cool indie gems get unveiled. That's the kind of event side of things, but I'm also on the branded side as well. We have our own YouTube channel and we have our own socials and stuff. So yeah, it's the first time I've been in an editorial role for a while, which is great. I used to be at IGN, where I was also a presenter and a voiceover, among lots of other things. And then I went to PlayStation Access for a bit and ran the socials for PlayStation UK and did about 6 months of also jumping into Access stuff. So that's where I think our paths crossed a little bit, was that you guys... I'm friends with Rosie. Obviously, you guys are friends with Rosie, but you saw me on a stream, I think, and then we were kind of like, Final Fantasy friends from there, really. So
the great connector.
Hey, Rosie Caddick, the great connector.
She is what I like to say, the immortal glue that keeps us all together. But yeah, so I've done all kinds of things. I'm a professional voiceover in my spare time, so I do everything from video game related showcases to like adverts that you might hear on the radio. I've never done any like voice acting work yet. I would love to do video game voice acting. That would be awesome.
That's the ultimate dream for me as well.
Oh, isn't it? Oh, God, it'd be amazing. Yeah. And it's the sort of thing where, having been a voiceover now for 6 years, I'm like, really, it's just the only difference is character work, right? So I might look into that this year and see if it's something else I can do. I don't think I'd necessarily want to make a full-on Ben Starr-esque career out of it, but it'd be something fun to do to kind of, add another string to the bow and just something really cool to experience. I also do lots of writing for just writing in general. I'm a wordsmith, I guess. I've always been sort of obsessed with the blank page, and this year I kind of want to get into my own fiction writing, but I've also been doing lots of script writing for other channels. So I recently started doing some stuff for Outside Xbox, so that was pretty cool. So now I can kind of say I've worked for Outside Xbox and Access. They're the two halves of the universe, aren't there? There isn't any.
Playing for both sides there.
Oh, exactly. Both sides of the fence. Is there a Nintendo equivalent? I don't know.
Outside Nintendo. Oh, wait, it's extra. Right.
Precisely. But yeah, I guess that's kind of me. I used to be a human child. Now I'm a human adult. I'm allergic to prawns. And I fucking love Final Fantasy. And I've already got my first swear in. And we're probably 3 minutes in. Hey!
I've never been more proud of a person in my life.
And yeah, you mentioned Ben Starr before I did as well, just putting it out there.
And a lot earlier than Alleyway Jack did as well. A lot earlier.
I feel like every time we say his name, it's sort of like It's a Wonderful Life type thing, like an angel gets its wings somewhere in the world. And...
See, I was going to say, if you turn the lights off and say Ben Starr's name 3 times, what do you think appears in the mirror? Is it him or one of his characters?
I've never wanted to try it. I've never wanted to try it, just in case he actually shows up.
It's the cutout of his face we both own. That's a story.
Oh, God.
There's a story to that. That's not something weird I came up with myself. We got it from the Final Fantasy Union. We do home pictures.
Oh, the quiz. Yeah,
Yes, we got that from the quiz, and I had it in my like trophy cabinet, just like at the bottom shelf.
Just hanging up Ben Starr in your trophy cabinet.
And my dad walked in. He's like, "Why have you got some bloke's face at the bottom of your trophy cabinet?" I was like,
"You're like, we're in love, Dad."
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, yes, we've shared a lift together, which is another story. But anyway, so that's really, really cool. What I wanted to ask you actually, the first question I've got, I like the terminology that you're a Swiss Army knife. So like obviously you've done lots of behind the scenes stuff, lots of in front of the camera stuff. So how important do you think it is to be a jack of all trades in the kind of work you do?
I think it's integral, really, to survival within any industry. But I think in games particularly, I mean, let's be real, 2024 was a incredibly hard year for a lot of people. There were redundancies across the board. I was one of them. And, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it's a guarantee for anyone to kind of succeed in the industry, because it's incredibly turbulent at the moment. And I hope that we see things smoothing out in the next year or two. But I do think the more you can do in terms of like the more you can upskill. I know it's not for everyone, that kind of approach either. I think some people, they might have like a real speciality that they stick to, and that's them. I think mine comes from, and I try not to talk about this all the time, but unfortunately it is an integral part of who I am. I also have ADHD. I was diagnosed within the last 3 months, and it's made sense of everything in my life. And I think I kind of owe that slightly to the reason why I would say I'm a Swiss Army knife, because my brain gets incredibly hungry. Like, she is ravenous, and she kind of wants to just turn her hand to as many things as she can. So, I'm a self-taught editor. I had lots of help from people kind of who were also amazing editors who kind of helped me get going, but then I just kind of experimented. And the same thing with, a lot of stuff, writing and presenting and getting in front of the camera and behind the scenes stuff. Like I've said to my awesome future game show brothers, I'd really like to learn more of the technical side of things this year. I'd like to learn more camera ops, and I'd like to learn more sound design and stuff. Like, I've just always been hungry to learn more, and I think, it never hurts to kind of like add those things to your bow, both from a professional advantage, but also just because you learn more stuff, and it's exciting. Definitely. It's fun. So yeah, I would say it's definitely an advantage. Come back to your question, Jack. Like, it is, I think, something that gives you a major foot up within any industry, let alone games. But it's also should be something that you enjoy. Like, I don't believe people should be boxed in. I spent a lot of time in advertising. My first job was in advertising, and someone literally told me when I was, I think, 23 or 24 to get back in my box. And I remember being like, whoo, wow, you've made a powerful enemy for life, my friend.
So the next question, Amy, is have you struck them from the record yet?
No. I don't intend to. They're a sad middle-aged man in a suit somewhere working in advertising. So I feel like that's the biggest punishment of all. But I do feel like it's the kind of thing where no one should ever see barriers, and that applies to everything. That applies to literally everything in life, regardless of where you're from, your gender, all of that stuff. It goes even vaster and vaster the more you think about it. But I think in terms of barriering away yourself from learning new things and from being able to do new things, if you are really passionate about presenting and you want to get in front of the camera, but at the moment all you're doing is just like writing the scripts, like have a crack at it, have a go at it, say to somebody, look, I've written this, I'd like to give it a go. If you actually are more in camera mode and you're kind of more public facing, but actually you'd really like to learn camera tech, like just ask. I just think, people are going to put red tape in the way of stuff like that, but it shouldn't be something that hinders you, because everybody should be given the opportunity to learn as many things as they want. Yeah. So long waffly answer here, but don't stay in your box.
We're all about the waffling.
We're all about long waffles. No.
You do end up with a lot more to do, and a lot more people rely. I will say, coming out of the box does have setbacks. My setbacks is that I'm just always on now. I never switch off. I am editing, writing, presenting, doing all the things, but it's fun, and I love it, and I wouldn't change it for the world. So learning to switch off is often difficult. When you become a jack of all trades, you end up being the person that everyone wants in their lives, because they're like, oh, you can do this, and you can do this, and you can do this, and you end up doing everything. But other than that, it's good. It's a solid advantage, I'd say.
Sleep be damned.
Sleep be damned. Who needs that?
So having said all that, then, obviously, you've already introduced the kinds of work you do and kind of trying to narrow it down. I still have a whole bunch of stuff written down here. There's writing, there's hosting, there's voice work, there's community management. What did you start off with, and what do you enjoy most and why?
Writing was what I started off with. I always wanted to be a writer in some form. I just didn't really know what form that would take. When I was a kid, I think I very naively was like, I will be a fiction writer. I will be a story writer.
Oh, you too, huh?
I think most people do, because when you're a kid, again, this is the beauty of like childhood, right? You don't have any of those boundaries around you. You don't really understand that actually to be an author, to publish work is incredibly hard.
So fucking difficult, yeah.
Oh my God. So you just write, and obviously you'll know this, Mol, from being a writer yourself. Like, you have that beautiful, unbridled freedom of experimentation and creativity in childhood where you'll just write. I started writing a novel when I was about 13, and rather foolishly, I wrote it all up by hand. And I don't understand why I did that, because it wasn't like computers weren't invented at the time. They absolutely were. But I was just like, I'm going to write this by pen.
If it makes you feel any better, I still write all of our scripts by hand in a coffee shop, and then I come home and I type it all up. I just can't type first.
Yes, yeah, I'm kind of, I like to scribble, right? Nowadays, I always like to write things because you can obviously change your thoughts and go backwards and forwards much easier on a computer. Me mansplaining computers to people. But it's just, I don't know what it was. I just wrote up like all of it, and then it was like a stack of paper, like about yay big. Like, it was sort of like an Argos catalogue size book that was under my desk for ages, and I never finished it. And again, that's probably owing to ADHD. But writing was always what I wanted to do. I didn't know if I would be a writer in a fictional sense or whether I would be... Gaming was always my other big passion in life. I picked up a controller for the first time when I was probably about 3, and it was Sonic the Hedgehog on Sega Mega Drive, and also Alex Kidd in Miracle World. And those were the two games that were just so formative. I was like, oh my God, this is what I want to do. I love this. Can't explain quite what this does to my brain, but I love it so much. And yeah, I guess as I sort of grew through uni, I was kind of like, right, well, I'll do an English degree. I actually did a joint honours, so I did a creative writing and English lit combined honours, because that way I figured, oh, it's cool, I'm reading some stuff and I'm writing some stuff, and the best way any writer will tell you to be a better writer is to read
more stuff.
So exactly, yeah. And loads of people, when I graduated uni and with my 2-1 in English lit and creative writing, everybody was like, oh, you're going to be a teacher then? And I was like, oh, absolutely not. But I didn't know where I wanted to go, whether I'd go into journalism, whether I'd go into editorial, which is, I guess, kind of where I am now. Like, I didn't really know. I never really wanted to be a games journalist. I never really wanted to review games. I don't know why. I just felt like
just want to play them instead. Don't I have to talk about them as well?
I don't know what it was. The games that I really love, and I suppose I have kind of got there, which is a nice, actually quite sweet thought, really. But I wanted to talk about the things that I'm passionate about with other people who are passionate about them. And that's exactly what we're doing right now in this present moment in time. So, Final Fantasy is a huge one. I'm also a massive fan of like the Remedyverse, Alan Wake, Control. I got to make a short last week on the connections between Severance and gaming. I don't know if you guys have watched the TV show. It's absolutely amazing. But that's something that is that's a very small piece of content. It's like a minute long, but that's the kind of thing is what I think I didn't know at the time I wanted to make, was just stuff that really appealed to people in a fandom. And I spent a lot of time, Mol, reading fan fiction as well. So I thought for a while, could I write fan fiction? But I actually preferred reading it to writing it. I don't know. It just sort of, I fell into advertising because I love a good pun. I've always got a pun in the oven. And I think that was kind of how it started. I started as a creative writer for a radio station. So I was doing all of their advertising. And I also had a bit of a psychology background as well. I had a psychology A-level, and I was always very good at kind of, it sounds awful, but like how to put messaging across in a way that's going to affect people. Like advertising is, and I haven't watched Mad Men, but everyone's like, oh, your job was basically Mad Men, and I'm like, oh. It was very soulless and I didn't like it, but there were times where I was like, oh, this is a puzzle, right? This is one big game in itself. You have to figure out how this chocolate bar needs to get sold to this particular demographic of woman in her 30s who drinks Pinot Noir. Like, you're almost building like a psychological profile of the person that you're advertising to. So I quite enjoyed that part of it as well. But yeah, it wasn't what I really wanted to do, and then sort of ended up at IGN, which was similar in terms of I worked for the branded team, but it was in gaming, which was brilliant. But yeah, I've waffled on for long enough. Writing was always the core skill, and I think even now, writing is still my core skill. Presenting probably second, because I did radio at uni. So I ran my own radio show when I was at university. I won a couple of awards, which was really cool.
Congratulations.
I got Best Female and Best Newcomer, which was awesome. And that was kind of how the presenting area of it started. So yeah, I'd probably say those two, voiceover and writing, are probably the two skills that I would say have been my sort of core, and everything else, editing, I guess, camera stuff, has always kind of bounced off from there. Yeah, I think that's probably fair to say.
I will say, having watched some of your interview videos where you're actually like in person interviewing other people for various platforms and about various content as well, I have, from the very, very first moment that I watched one of those, I have been in awe of your confidence and your skill to actually interview people. I mean, listeners will know that I have no background in any of that kind of thing. I'm a complete newcomer to all of this. And the amount of times that I watched your content and was just like, she's not even stammering. She's not going, she's not, there's no breaks. Like, this is incredible. I want to be like that.
See, I feel like I do.
Oh God, no, not at all.
My brain goes at like 90 miles per hour. So I often have to like slow myself down basically to get through a conversation and not feel like I'm bowling someone over. It's weird. I definitely still have those moments where I feel like I've messed up or I feel like I've said the wrong thing. So you'd be surprised what's going on inside a lot of people's heads, even the people who have
it all together.
100%. There are people who do live shows on stage, and I would love to do stuff like that. But I also feel like there would be moments the whole time where I'd be like, oh my God, I said that wrong. Oh my God, did I pronounce that person's name correctly? Oh my God, oh my God. And I think people just have to develop that very calm, smoothed appearance externally, don't they? To kind of throw people off the scent that they're panicking. But that's really kind. Thank you. I love doing interviews. Oh,
you are very, very good at it. Ironically, we're technically interviewing you, so hopefully we're doing okay. But on that, like, I've done, not professionally or anything like that, but I did stage work and stuff when I was a kid. So I'm one of those people that says I don't get nervous before I go on stage, but I do get nervous before doing something I've never done before. So, for example, when I was in a band, I was really nervous before playing my local pub because it was all my family and friends and stuff around. That was what was nerve-wracking. But like, the way I look at it, and this sounds really pretentious, you like become a character. That's the way I look at it anyway. But yeah, I've not got any advice there. You're the guru. So
yeah, you're certainly the expert.
I would love to get up on stage more and do stuff like that. I'll confess this to you guys.
And all of our listeners.
Fun little exclusive. Yeah, of course. And everyone listening at home, of course. I really want to do... I can't believe I'm saying this because it will end up coming back to haunt me in a fun way. I have been obsessed with drag for a long time. And I've always wanted to explore doing drag from like a video game angle.
Cool.
I don't know if you guys have ever watched Slay Station. That's incredible. I also go to a local Bristol show called The Drag Dungeoneers, and they just play D&D in drag. Wow. And it's hysterically funny. And I even have a name for who my drag queen / king might be. And it's Peggy 18.
That's
fantastic.
Holy shit.
So,
that's amazing.
Yeah, one day I just need to make it a thing. But I'm like, God, how do I even... So it just goes to show, like, even when you think, you know, I'm really jealous, Jack, that you're able to kind of get up on stage and do stuff like that. Because I'm like, oh my God, what would happen if I just like completely froze? Oh my gosh.
I think at that point, if you freeze as Peggy 18, then you're just doing a reboot, aren't you?
Well, exactly. And I think Peggy is her own person in the same way that you were just saying, you know, you're an actor. Like, you become a character when you're on stage.
Yeah.
I think everyone's performing, aren't they? All the time.
All
you become
of the time.
Totally.
a different character depending on who you're speaking to. We're all acting slightly, unless we're on the sofa, picking our noses, watching TV. Everybody is performing to some degree. But yeah, I think Peggy 18 has always been in the back of my head, like, oh, I should do that.
I love that. That's a brilliant idea.
Maybe it's the year. Yeah, that's the project that we haven't touched yet.
If/when we ever do an EXP required live show, you can turn up on the first episode or the first showing as Peggy 18.
Please,
there we go. We'll make a deal.
Absolutely do
God.
that. And Jack, I don't know if you're in for this, but I would so be willing to come up with a persona as well.
Totally up for that.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, check out Slay Station if you haven't. They are fantastic.
I know there was a Slay Station show 2023 summer, I think, and I was so excited. I saw the day. It was like, excellent. I've just come back from holiday. Of course, I got ill, so I wasn't able to go, and I was miserable the whole time because I know people that did go, and they said it was brilliant. So,
well, if you're ever in Bristol, Mol, let me know. We'll go to Drag Dungeoneers. Super fun.
Right. Well, there's a train in 5 minutes. I'm going.
Good old Bristol. Bristol's a great place. Yeah, no, that's a deal. We'll, when or if we have a live show, we'll have you on as a Peggy 18 if you want.
18.
That'd be cool.
And can you imagine the intro as well, where it's like Peggy 18? Like, she already has her own theme music.
We'll get Ben Starr to say that.
Yeah. No, it's all coming together, isn't it?
I don't think me and Ben Starr can't share the stage. I'd overpower him.
He can stand off the stage and he can say Peggy 18. Literally just travel all the way there just to say Peggy 18 and then walk out. It'd be the funniest thing in the world, you know?
Oh, God. How much is 2 words from Ben Starr going to cost us?
I don't want to think about that.
Worth it.
He owes me a favour, that man.
So, question I've got for you then, obviously, I think you've sort of mentioned this very briefly anyway. So, obviously, a big sort of games media person, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I suppose that's probably, I guess, what you'd say, really, is just, a content creator feels weird because content creator to me makes me think of like an influencer whose full-time job is literally just to churn it out. That is what I do, but it's on behalf of a channel itself. You know, I also run content that isn't featuring me for other, you know, I edit stuff that my other presenters have done, and I kind of run it from like a production standpoint and make sure all the socials are looking good and everything. So I suppose there's more to it than that. But yeah, a games media person is definitely a good way of seeing it. Yeah.
Is that a term I've coined? No.
Games media person, a GMP. Oh, that sounds good.
A GMP. So are there any other GMPs that you've like been influenced by? Obviously, you mentioned about getting into advertisement. Was there anyone that you looked at when you were doing that stuff that you thought, you know, I want to be this person, or this is what I want to do?
We spoke about this before the episode started, but I adore Holly Bennett. I think she's absolutely brilliant. She was always my kind of inspiration. I think both me and Rosie are kind of like mother when it comes to Holly, because, you know, we've both been Access girlies now, and I just admired Holly so much for the way that she really brought that channel to life from the early days when it just started. But also she was, from like my kind of insider knowledge of the team, she was very much the person who was like, we can do this, like, fair enough, we haven't done anything like this before, but we can absolutely do it. And me and Rosie ended up coining the term, what would Bennett do, whenever we kind of felt like we were stuck in a situation where we couldn't really move anywhere, or we weren't getting the answers, or we weren't getting the client responses or whatever, anything that we needed, because she was just fearless. She was very much that person who was like, I like this idea for a content piece and I'm going to make it happen, and I don't really care who gets in my way. But it wasn't in a ruthless way. She was never aggressive with anything. She was just brilliant at like solving problems, and brilliant at coming up with ideas, and brilliant at making them happen. So yeah, I would definitely say Holly is formidable, and I think she deserves all the success with everything that she's begun building with The Natural Six, but also just with her own career, because she's always been someone who's really fought for it, and just a lovely person as well. So, and I've only met Holly a handful of times, really, truthfully. Like, Rosie obviously knows her really, really well, but yeah, she's definitely left such a really lovely impression across the industry. She's created something that I think is felt across content creators like us, or games media people like us, who kind of are building out our own sort of, we do a little bit of hosting, but we also do a little bit of production, but we also do a little bit of editing. And yeah, I think she's definitely been I'd say a solid inspiration for sure. I'm trying to think like who else is kind of, I grew up watching, I say I grew up, I was a teenager at the time, but I watched Access. I also watched Outside Xbox, and they were both channels that I really loved. And obviously being able to work on Access and be a host on Access for a bit, and also write for Outside Xbox, like, that's a dream come true, because both of those platforms, I really admired their tone of voice. I really admired their, just the way in which they approached fandom. Like, they were fans speaking to fans, and that's always been a big thing for me. It's why I hated advertising so much, because it felt soulless and it felt disingenuous. I think content should be made for the people who are going to enjoy it, not just because it's targeting them to sell them something, or targeting them to kind of like make them subscribe to something. Like, there is a real you scratch my back, I scratch your back with everything in social media, because you need to grow a following in order to kind of reach more people, but there needs to be an authenticness to it. And I think that's what Access and Outside Xbox did really well, was they spoke to gamers just because they were gamers. I haven't watched them for years now, and I know they probably, I think there was a lot of cancellations, which I'm not going to go into, obviously, for obvious reasons. But like, well, Rooster Teeth stuff, I used to really enjoy. I bet you knew, didn't you? I did watch lots of Achievement Hunter stuff.
I was a big Achievement Hunter girly back in the day.
Yeah. I thought they had something really special as a channel, and then obviously there was lots of controversy around that. But honestly, I haven't really watched, I would say, Achievement Hunter. I'm probably not the best person clued up on it, but I'm talking when I was a teenager, sort of.
Yeah, I think I stopped watching them around 2012, 2013.
Yes, it was. Yeah, that would have been right, because I graduated in 2014, and by that point, I'd kind of I wasn't as big a fan. There we go. Definitely wasn't as big a fan. But them and Funhouse as well. I really liked Funhouse back in the day. Like, they were channels that were doing something with comedy and doing something with relatability, and you know, they didn't feel like they were sort of soulless in that regard. And I don't really watch a huge amount of streamers. And when I actually left Access, it was actually so sweet. Loads of people on Twitter were messaging me going, why don't you stream? Oh my god, you should stream, you should. And I was like, I just don't think I have the time. I really don't think I have the time. I struggle to kind of like make all of my passion projects happen alongside a busy job, alongside having just a social life and keeping myself busy and fed with games. Like, I just feel like I would really struggle to make that work.
And like you say, when you have so many things under your belt and you're always on at this point, it really gets to a point where you need to forcibly turn yourself off, I've found. And I'm not even doing anywhere near as much as you.
Amen. My close friend, George Nash, who I used to work with, he's also an IGN presenter. He said to me once, like, how do you do all the things that you do? Like, he used the time turner from, like, Harry Potter. He was like, do you have, like, Hermione's time turner or something? How do you do it all? And I'm like, I don't know. I work until I'm literally about to drop. And then I sleep. And then I wake up and I do it all again. And he's like, right, okay, that sounds like fucking hell.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I guess it kind of is. But I was saying this to somebody the other day. For me, it's such an internal struggle of relaxation versus productivity.
Yeah.
It is an ADHD thing, but I don't think it's necessarily exclusive to ADHD. I think it can affect a lot of people. You guys might be feeling heard and seen by this too. Being able to sit down and just be like, right, I am committed for the next 2 or 3 hours to playing a video game.
Yeah.
That is so hard for me.
It
like,
really
my brain
is. It used to be so easy. What happened?
And the worst thing was when I was a kid, oh my God, I was a weird kid, right? I mean, a weird kid and a weird adult, it tracks. But I was such a strange kid because I kind of had this really odd sense of time as a child that to me, time was infinite. And I remember having games that I hadn't played when I was like 8 or 9 and being like, oh, I'll save them because eventually I'll run out of games. Spoiler alert, baby Amy, baby girl, you ain't running out of games. They keep making them.
They keep making
You're
them.
never going to run out of games.
Someone finally put it into words.
Right. And I remember having like games where I'd go, oh, I'm not going to play that this weekend. I'll replay one I've played before because I can't play a new one because eventually, oh my God, I'll run out and then I won't have any more new things to play. If I could go back, guys, and I could just slap that child and just go, excuse me, Amy, play your damn games because eventually you're going to have a backlog so big that you won't be able to play any of them. I was also really weird. This is a story that I've told on a podcast before. I'm sure I have. But when I was like 7, we had Easter eggs. Did you guys used to get Easter eggs?
Got to hunt for the eggs.
Got to hunt for the... Yeah, we used to do egg hunts and then there'd always be like a massive pile of like big ones at the end. So every Easter, I, as like a maybe 7-year-old kid, used to get, I don't know, about 8 Easter eggs. And my little brother, 3 years younger than me, would eat them all within the weekend. He would have eaten every single one of those Easter eggs, probably by Sunday night, Monday morning. And he used to make himself sick because he'd eat so quickly. And I used to kind of watch my brother doing this and be like, oh, well, wise old me at 7 years old, I'm going to keep these Easter eggs. I don't know whether there's going to be some sort of like nuclear fallout or something, and I might need them.
You have to ration these things.
You have to ration these things. I'm going to put them under my bed and I'm going to keep them there and I'm only going to eat an Easter egg once a week and then my chocolate joy will last evermore. And I did that. And then by week 3, I went under my bed and a lot of them had gone moldy. And I remember at 7 years old being sat crying about these Easter eggs and just being like, wait, there's a lesson here. Eat your Easter eggs while the sun doth shine.
I like that. I do like that's a really interesting little anecdote. That just eat your Easter eggs as opposed to like seize the day, eat your Easter eggs.
I've genuinely always thought about it. I'm like, oh my God, like eat your Easter eggs, Amy. Like you were picturing that you'd have Easter eggs for days and now you have none.
I like the acronym a lot better than YOLO as well. What would it be?
Eat your Easter eggs.
Be
a GMP E.
EYEE. Eat your Easter eggs.
Eat your Easter eggs. Yeah.
It's just funny, isn't it? How we kind of have that sense of time as we're a kid. We're like, oh, time is just boundless. And then we get older and we're like,
oh. Noise? I think it's my Steam backlog. It's crying out.
Yep.
Well, I'll just slap the mute button on that.
I've got games here I haven't even taken out of the wrapper.
Same. Oh, it's so bad. My friend the other day bought me, bless him, for my birthday, he bought me some Lego and he was like, I feel like you could do with Lego because you're someone who struggles to relax. So what you can do is you can watch telly or something and you can do the Lego at the same time. The Lego's sat on my desk for the last 6 months, guys. And he keeps messaging me going, have you done the Lego? And I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to ever do the Lego. I think I'll be 85 when I do the Lego.
I don't know if I've ever said this before, but like what I tend to do, and I don't plan this, is my birthday's in April, but I'll get something for Christmas.
Subtle hint there, Jack. Thank you.
Yeah, add it to your list. So I get something for Christmas, and then like on my birthday I'll get something else, but then I'll start watching or using the thing I got for Christmas, and then at Christmas I'll start using or playing the thing I got for my birthday. That happens so often.
Yeah.
It's like I think it was like Game of Thrones. I ended up getting like whatever season it was of Game of Thrones for Christmas 2000 and whatever it was, and then like the next, oh no, I'll watch this on my birthday. It's just completely nuts. It's like, I don't know what it is. It's just
it's funny, isn't it? It's a strange thing that we as human beings almost like to ration time in a way that we have no business doing, but it makes us feel better in some way, and we almost don't want to do things straight away. The amount of times people have recommended me TV shows and I've gone, no, I'm not ready to watch that yet.
I am exactly the same way. It has been a long running joke with my real life group of friends that I just don't watch things anymore. They've stopped recommending stuff to me and just tell me what happens now. I seem to remember my best friend, her husband one time was trying really, really hard to get me to watch something, and my best friend was just like, just tell them what happens, because they're not going to watch it.
I've got friends who literally read the last page of a book first.
Oh, I used to do that as a child, actually.
Some people, it's strange, but it's also, I just like it. Yeah, I like how
you know what you're
brains
building
work.
towards. You don't need to worry about everything in the middle. Now, if only I could do that with my real life.
So you can't do that with games though. Or you can't. It's annoying. Like games punish you for being bad at them. It sucks.
Yeah,
You actually have to actively progress. Yeah, this is the thing.
I think it might have been Dara O'Brien that said that it's the only medium that actively punishes you for being good at it.
Yeah.
Like you can't go, you know what, I'll skip this chapter or I'll listen to it on an audio book because I'm struggling to.
I love that Dara O'Brien sketch. I remember that when he's like, you get halfway through a novel and the novel's like, you have to unlock this next chapter by doing this thing.
I think with me, I mean, like I've never been tested for like ADHD or anything like that, but like I had this thing when I used to read books where, like, for example, like when ha 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 was typed out, I had to read every ha. So like I struggle with things like that where I'm like, no, I've got to go back. I don't think I read every single one. Like, so I still have that a little bit. So yeah, with books, it's like, you know, maybe it's a bit easy to listen to this to get past it, that sort of thing. But with games, you have a certain skill. You've got to get past something. Or I suppose nowadays you can sort of watch long plays, but it's not the same, really.
It's not the same. No,
sometimes
it's not the same. Unless it's a horror game, because I am a wuss and I really struggle with horror games. I'm thinking of doing a fundraising thing soon where I force myself to play horror games.
Oh yeah,
charity, but I'm dreading it because I am a wimp. Like, I am a massive wimp. So long plays, really, that's what it's designed for me, is being able to watch someone play Outlast without having to ensure it myself.
There's something really, really interesting about playing horror with someone else, because me and my friend a few years ago, we went through all the old PS1 Resident Evil games, and we also went through Dino Crisis as well.
I can do Dino Crisis, I can do Resi Evil. It's modern, more contemporary,
modern stuff.
Horror where you're being chased is the worst, man.
But but it's something about like when one of you sat there and you're watching the other person, and then, like, for example, there's a scene in, I think it's Resident Evil 2, where you go through a door and then obviously that loading screen loads where the door zooms in on you, it comes through, and there's one of them that tricks you and zombies walk out of it, and I got to that bit and I was playing the game and I literally like froze, and I was like in such fear, and my mate was like, what are you worried about, what's going on? I was like, but because I was controlling the fucking game when it was happening, so this like weird feeling came over me, like I'm going to be eaten, you know. It's like and
you have the agency, don't you? You actually in control of it, and when you're watching it, you're absolutely passive. So, you know, you watch a horror film and you see a slasher murder a bunch of teenagers and you're just like, it's horrible, I don't want to watch it, but you have no agency in it. Whereas, like, when you are said teenager running away from said scary monster, it hits different.
Yeah, horror is one of those interesting ones. Horror is a genre that I absolutely love. Horror films, horror books, absolutely adore them. Horror games, can't fucking play them. Cannot fucking play them, but I adore them. And I have tried, oh my god, I have tried, in the immortal words of Four Non-Blondes and He-Man. But yeah, bringing that one back. I remember when I was about, I want to say like 13, and being told for years and years by my dad, like, look, you are not allowed to play Resident Evil. These are a 15. You are not 15 yet. They will scare you. And like, and of course, me being 13, I was like, well, I know everything. Yeah. I'm going to find a copy of Resident Evil 3 and I'm going to play it by myself.
No one's going to know. You picked that one.
And I remember very specifically having a day off school once because I was ill. And I was like, you know what? I've always gotten stuck playing the like intro of Resi 3. I don't know why. I'm just not very good at video games, I guess.
Stars.
So I was going to...
Nemesis scared the shit out of me as a kid. Even just the cover of like the game, his face. There's something, even now, I've played the remake. I don't know if you've played the remake, but
I've watched a long play.
He's not as scary. He's not as scary, I swear, as he was in the old game. No.
I think it's the fixed camera, and this was exactly the moment, because I got relatively far. I think I got up to the police station for the first time. I was like, right, I've been playing for a while. I'm not feeling so hot. I'm going to find the next like typewriter save. I'm going to turn it off, maybe have a little nap, maybe a soup or something like that. Got upstairs, found the bazooka, and I'm like, sick. I can basically win the game with this. And then I leave that room where you find the bazooka and all the music has stopped and it's just like this thudding in the background. And I was like, oh, it's not good. Go downstairs. Nemesis jumps through the window. And I remember pausing the game, picking up a newspaper and just reading the newspaper for half an hour to try and like calm my heart rate down and my nerves. I picked the game back up. I tried shooting Nemesis with the bazooka, missed every fucking shot, ran into the save room, saved, took the game out of the PlayStation, and I never touched Resident Evil again.
I love that you saved. You just wasted your bazooka shots, but you were like, I'm going to save.
No one said I was a smart man. I remember telling my dad about this only a couple of years ago, actually. So this is a good, 16, 17 years after the fact. I was like, Dad, I just want you to know you were right. I shouldn't have played Resident Evil. And he just started laughing at me.
Yeah, no, it's fair. And to be fair, there are games that catch you out as well. There are games that aren't meant to be horror games.
Yeah.
I wasn't even that young. I was probably at uni, we're talking 20 when I played Uncharted. And the first Uncharted gets fucking creepy towards the end of the game.
It does,
well, not even necessarily, I think it's the third act, isn't it? You get all those creepy zombie people thing.
Yeah.
I was just really enjoying this lovely Indiana Jones-esque adventure. The worst thing that I was, envisioning was that somebody might have shot off Drake's adventuring hat or something. Actually, he doesn't have a hat, does he? I'm thinking of Indy. But yeah, I just didn't think it was going to get creepier than henchmen turning up in jeeps, and all of a sudden there were horrific zombie monsters crawling around in a tomb, and that scared the life out of me.
So I think we've brought up zombies a couple times now, and there was a fantastic little piece that you did with a quote-unquote zombie expert for IGN, which I really, really loved, actually. That was a fantastic piece of interview
It is something
work.
I share with a lot of people, actually, yeah. It's part of my portfolio.
Number 1 on the pinned list, I think. But what I really wanted to know, because there was one part in that interview where you ask this man who probably wasn't expecting this answer, do zombies poop? And all I could think of was just, this is what games journalism should be. Amy's asking the fucking real questions here. And my question for you, and this isn't the question that you've put down in our notes, Jack, so I humbly apologise. But is there anything similar question-wise that you've always wanted to know? Because I know growing up, obviously all of the early, PlayStation 1 Final Fantasies all have pre-rendered backgrounds, right? Final Fantasy 7, a lot of the houses have got toilets in them. Those are gone by Final Fantasy 8 and Final Fantasy 9. You never see bathrooms in a Final Fantasy ever again. And what I want to know is, where are these people pooping?
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. I always used to say it's incredible that 10 has airships and spheres that you can kind of record onto, like ancient technology, Machina, and Final Fantasy 8 has a literal floating academy, but no one seems to have invented any kind of waste management at all.
Yeah, where's the plumbing? Who's doing that?
Where's the plumbing?
Or communications, but that's another story.
Yeah, maybe they don't poop? I mean, they certainly eat. I mean, Zell is going to be backed up with hot dogs for days. Where is that going?
Yeah, and like you said with this IGN person, if they eat, it must come out. Where are they going to? I'm asking the real questions and I won't stop until I get an answer.
Yeah, I mean, next time I'm interviewing Nomura-san, I will ask him.
That's it, yeah.
Can you imagine just all the deep... To be fair, I feel like those are the kind of questions that they probably would never expect anyone to ask, but they probably would enjoy that question far more a lot of the time.
I'd like to think so anyway, yeah.
Can you tell us something else about what inspired this? What can we expect from the sequel?
Where are they shitting, Nomura?
Where are they shitting, Nomura? Tell us! Yeah, God, that is so bizarre. I mean, I'm baffled. I'm absolutely baffled. I guess, whenever they go to sleep in an inn or something, they probably...
I guess they're not showing you everything, yeah.
No, but still, I mean... Yeah, that is do you know what? You've kind of broken my brain there, Mol. I'm literally I've always I've never really thought about it, but now I do.
I know exactly what's going to happen now. Rather than go through any of your backlog, you're going to replay these games, you're going to look at the backgrounds, and you're going to go, Mol was right. There are no bathrooms, but they are everywhere in 7.
They are literally everywhere in 7, aren't they? It's mental.
In 7, yeah. And I think as well, it's the idea of I don't know about you guys, but I would need a wee in the middle of a long fight.
Absolutely.
And they never seem to.
Hold a minute, don't stab me.
Yeah, we'll get into 10 in a bit, but imagine you're at that bit where you're crashing the wedding to try and save Yuna from Team Meguado, and nature calls, and you realise that you just need to drop the kids off at the pool. Where the hell can you go?
Or even worse, you're Yuna, you're escaping the wedding, you are in this fucking wedding dress. Where are you going to go? What are you going to do? Terrible.
No one just do it when she jumps off. She can just in the middle. She can just do a business there. No one will know.
And I will say, as someone who used to cosplay as well, these costumes, these outfits, they are not practical to be going to the bathroom in. There is swearing involved. There are too many belts. Listen, I know we're not that close, but like, can you watch me? Because I need this right now.
Yeah, no, I get you. I've only cosplayed one time. I cosplayed as Renoa, and that was a very fortunate outfit. I felt that.
Yeah, that's one of the better ones out there.
But
made a good choice with Renoa.
Can't believe we've got here, guys.
We managed to segue into Final Fantasy by talking about having a shit. That's what we like.
That's what I'm all about, Jack.
Yeah, that just sums this podcast up, really, doesn't it?
There is one more question that I'd like to ask, and this one is serious, so everyone who tuned out for the shitting can come back now. As a woman in the games industry, we've already spoken about how gaming has this, for some fucking reason, just overview that it is a male-dominated thing, even though we know that is not the case. There have been myriad studies saying that that is not the case, and we know that there are so many women that work in the industry. Obviously, you've been in the MCV 30 Under 30, you were a Women in Gaming finalist in 2020, and, you know, looking at the list of other people who were actually nominated as finalists, like, you're not alone. You are nowhere near alone, or even in a very small, you know, segment of that. But I can't help but feel, as someone who isn't in the industry proper, it still seems a very daunting place to be. So, like, what's it been like actually working in the games industry as a woman? And has there been a specific role that you felt most comfortable in and supported in?
I've been lucky in that I think most of my roles that I've had, I've been lucky to have been supported by lots of people. I think allyship comes more from individuals.
Yeah.
As we've spoken about before, I know we were chatting about this before we jumped on the podcast, but I do think commenters and the friction that comes from just putting yourself out there as a woman publicly, if you're writing an article and that article is just, you know, something that's quite faceless sometimes, then you might not get as much of it. But just by appearing on a channel as a woman, you are naturally going to attract trolls.
Yeah, I know, just for working with YouTube and with Jack, every single time that I've done a voiceover, and it hasn't been very many compared to the ones that Jack's done, but I'm terrified every time they go out. You know, I come to expect that the reaction is not going to be good, and it hasn't been that way, like, with the actual experience either, so there's still that fear. I completely get that.
Absolutely. And I mean, I've had one of my first comments at IGN was someone wrote under one of my videos, "Women can't play games." And they'd spelt it WAMEN, which I think tells you everything you need to know.
Everything you need to know.
But I actually printed it out and I framed it for a while because I just thought it was really funny. And people used to come to my house and I'd be like, "Women can't play games." And they'd be like, "Hey, look at you, women, making your way in games." But yeah, it's hard to explain because I'm very conscious of being someone who goes, it's all fine. It's been great for me because A, it hasn't always been. There have 100% been times where that hasn't been the case. And also, I don't want to encourage the fact that we are done with the mission to improve visibility within the games industry, because we're certainly not. And that does not just include, you know, women. It also includes minorities in sort of trans people and people of color, LGBTQIA people. Like, I think everyone plays games, for fuck's sake, man. But it's the visibility and the loudest voices in the room, which not always, but do tend to be the straight white men who, you know, very much dictate that for everyone else. And again, I am of the mind of saying, like, that's not saying that there aren't. Most of my allies within my role have been straight white men. That's not me condemning any particular, type of person. It's just me saying that the bigoted people out there tend to trample on the minorities, and they are there and they'll always be there. Yeah. When I was at IGN, I remember I did a video, actually it was for Yeti, the very mic that I have now. The Yeti Blue mics. It was a piece of content sponsored by Yeti. So it was kind of like an introduction on how to get into streaming. Right. And they wanted to interview different people on their experiences, and it would be helpful if those people did use Yeti mics, but if they didn't use Yeti mics, we could provide them with Yeti mics. So it was a sponsored piece of content, but it was done in a way that wasn't kind of forced down your throat. It wasn't like, oh, here's a Yeti mic, let me pose next to it. It was just, if we could have them in the video and these people could relay their experiences about being a streamer, and how they got into streaming, then we could make a nice little guide to streamers to put out there on the internet. And I said, okay, that sounds great. And every single person that they had suggested was a straight white man. And I was like, okay, this is going to sound pretty radical, but how about we do look for people who represent minorities? And what I received in response was, well, there'll be backlash. People won't like it. And I'm like, I don't really give a shit. These people do play games.
Yeah.
They do exist. It is only visibility that makes us think they don't. And that visibility is being perpetuated by people not giving them any airtime.
Yeah.
Like, yes, you're going to get nasty comments. I understand that. And someone even said, it's cruel that you're subjecting them to that. And I was like, well, I also want other people to watch their video, people of color, queer people, and go, oh, wow, that person is like me. And they're on an IGN video and they're in an advert for streaming. And it's representation, isn't it, at the end of the day? So we did it. And I thought it was great. Naturally, we got a lot of trolls. Of course we did. But you get trolls whatever you do. And like I was saying to you before this call, I've shared this advice on many, many podcasts. The best advice I ever got was from Daniel Krupa from RKG, who used to work with me on IGN UK. He was part of the editorial team. I was part of the branded team. But he once said to me when I got quite upset about a woman plays games comment, he said to me, when was the last time you commented on a video? And I was like, well, probably never. And he said, exactly. You're a well-rounded, grounded, intelligent person, and you never comment on videos. You never even like videos. All you do is watch them and move on. So think about the silent majority of the thousands of people that have watched that video. Most of them will just have enjoyed it or kind of been indifferent to it. Not every single person. 23 people in the comments might be mean to you, but like they are 23 people out of all the others.
Yeah.
Like make videos for the silent majority. And I've never ever forgotten that. So yeah, I guess coming back to your question, Mol, like I've had lots of allyship and I'm always determined to be an ally for other, not just for women myself, but also for other minorities as well within the industry. So yeah, I do think I have been lucky, but I would be lying if I said that it hasn't been turbulent, because it has. I worked for a publication when I was still in advertising. I actually started working for like a webzine just like as a volunteer, basically, because I was desperate to break into the games industry, but I didn't really have any experience. I'd only been in radio up until that point, and I started writing for like a webzine. And the guy who was the editor-in-chief of that was incredibly sexually harassing of me. He introduced me to his team with a drooling emoji on a public email. Yeah.
Ooh, on a public email?
On an email with his entire team. Yeah, he emailed
Nice
his
guy.
entire... Yeah, he still follows me, actually. And every now and again, he likes things and comments on them. And I'm like, wow, that's incredible. I can't believe that you're
Jesus
still
Christ.
on Twitter. But anyway, I won't name names. But he was just like... Yeah, and then we'd go out to like, you know, sort of industry parties and stuff, and he would just get very drunk and very grabby, and I'd just be like, what the fuck is happening here? So I've had that, and I've had it in other companies as well. I think that the company that I definitely experienced it the least in terms of that sort of male-female divide was Access. Like, you know, Reach are definitely really awesome people, and they aren't that way inclined at all.
Just as a consumer, they have a fantastic vibe, very, very chilled out.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there's obviously going to be problems within any company.
Yeah.
But I was never treated any differently, which is great. And I think this is the thing as well. Women often, like, there is such a misconception that, like, if we're a female in the games industry, we want to be treated like, oh, look at you, you mythical unicorn.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. We don't. We just want to muck in with the boys. And actually, now I'm at Future Game Show, like, I can't speak more highly of, like, my Future Game Show brothers, because we've had conversations before where like I have said stuff that has happened to me in the past, and Jules has literally looked like he's about to be sick, bless him. He's just like, oh my god, I can't believe that. Like they just, it's always good to share your experiences because they do happen. But yeah, like this is the thing, it's not all male gamers that treat people like that. It's not. It's just a minority. It's the people with the loudest voices in the room. And actually you'll find that there are a lot of allies within the industry. And I think that's a really awesome way to end it. Because, it's just finding those people and spreading the word and realizing that, you know, you haven't had the same experience as other people. So actually being able to relate to them is the biggest thing, really. We could all just empathize with each other. I think that would make the world a better place.
God, if only.
Yeah, it's way easier said than done. But,
we're doing our small bit by talking about it, aren't we?
We are,
Absolutely.
exactly.
Okay, so we'll take a break and be back in a minute. See you in a bit. Hello, welcome back after that really, really long break. Ha ha, same joke again. How you doing? Right, we're going to talk more about Final Fantasy X. We've touched upon Final Fantasy X and one of the best scenes in the game, and also whether there's toilets in Final Fantasy X, which I'm sure there are if we dig far enough of all the things to say about looking for toilets.
Well, yeah, if you dig far enough, you're going to...
Less of the digging, less of the digging. The Sade Beach is full of potholes and we don't want to know what they are.
Absolutely. So Final Fantasy X, we try on this podcast to like focus in on what people's sort of favourite games are or what the most interesting games and stuff like that. So obviously we've not really asked yet, but what was your introduction to the Final Fantasy series and how did 10 factor into that, should we say?
So technically, my introductory was Kingdom Hearts. I played Kingdom Hearts first. And I think Kingdom Hearts is, by definition, the ultimate gateway drug into the series, right?
I've heard that before, actually.
It is,
yes.
100%. And I think, it was the perfect mix. I was about the same age as Sora. I think I was like 14, 15. And there is a sort of slight metaphoric growth from the cutesy Disney into the, much more sort of macabre, creepy monster Final Fantasy world that you go on through that age anyway. And I think it was the perfect time playing it when early teens. Really, really loved Kingdom Hearts. Fell madly in love with Kingdom Hearts. And then I played the second one as well. But between that, it was kind of when I started then dabbling in Final Fantasy. And I can still picture it clear as day. There was a tiny little video game store, independent game store in my hometown of Wellingborough. And it was on the high street, tucked away. And it always smelt slightly damp in there. And there was an old, very grumpy man behind the counter who every time I walked in would go, "Don't touch anything." And I'd be like, "Hey, come on, I'm a girl. Like, what am I going to do? I don't even know.
You're going to get cooties on it, Amy.
I'm going to get cooties on my things." And I'd walk around and I would just look at all the games. And a lot of the time I didn't have much in the way of pocket money, so I would never really buy much. But I went in there with some money that my mum had given me for a birthday or Christmas. I think I was about 14 or 15. And, maybe younger, actually. I think, 10 would have been when I was maybe I played Kingdom Hearts a bit earlier. You know what? Kingdom Hearts definitely would have been about 11, actually. But yeah, I started Kingdom Hearts then, so I would have probably been about 12 or 13, and that was when I decided I was ready for my first Final Fantasy game. And I walked the tiny little clammy sort of worn carpet floors of this little game shop and I saw 10. Actually, I saw 10-2 first. And I remember going, "Oh, okay, this is cool." And I grabbed 10 and then I grabbed 10-2 and I was like, right, I'll get these two. And at that point, Roman numerals to me, I credit my knowledge of Roman numerals. They were doing I don't know if you guys watched The Traitors, but they were doing a challenge on The Traitors the other day with Roman numerals. And I was just screaming at them for their ignorance. I was like, clearly none of you are Final Fantasy fans. Oh my God. But yeah, I didn't know what the Roman numerals meant at that point. I was still very young and I was just like, cool, I'll just take these two. And I remember having that classic thing that everyone, it's so surreal now, guys, to think about a world without Final Fantasy being in my life, right? Like without my knowledge. I can't even remember it. But I remember doing the thing of like, do I need to play the first one? And the guy rolling his eyes behind the counter and being like, no, they're all individual stories. They're non-sequential. Just play it. And I was like, okay. And stupidly, I played 10-2 first, which was hysterical.
Of course you did.
Brilliant.
I brilliantly put 10-2 in the PS2 first and was like, this is cool. Loving this Charlie's Angels vibe. Oh my God. What can I do for you? Absolute bop. But I don't really understand what's going on. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll try 10 first. So I played 10 and I was absolutely enthralled. It was the first game, the first mainline Final Fantasy that I finished, if you don't include, obviously, Kingdom Hearts as a Final Fantasy game. I played 10 solidly. I just did not put it down. I was so obsessed with it. I have cried at that game. My mum has experienced that game with me when I was a young teenager. I think I was about 12 when I came downstairs and I'd finished it and I burst into tears because of the ending. And my mum was like hugging me and just being like, "Oh my God, like, are you okay?" And I was like, "Oh, that was just a dream." And she's just like, obviously, like, the ending of 10 is complicated for like a layman. Do you know what I mean? My mum doesn't understand what a faith is. And I'm just like rumbling on. And yeah, I cried at bosses in it. I got stuck at bosses that made me so frustrated I was in tears at times, but like in a really kind of joyful, in a way that I was like, God, I'm so engaged with this thing. I just want to get past this bit. I want to see what happens next. The biggest fights that really hit me were Unalesca and Seymour the first time around. I don't know why. The one where he summons Anima, really struggled in that fight.
That is annoying, that fight.
Really annoying fight. Unalesca can get in the fucking bin. Hate her so much. I remember every single, and it was proved recently because I think me and Alex Young, who's one of my closest friends from Access, we were playing a bit of 10 and it was that scene and I was able, almost like I was a woman possessed to recite every bit of dialogue in the scene before the Unalesca fight, because there was no way of skipping it back then, and I just knew every single thing from what Auron was going to say, from what Lulu was going to say. It was madness.
What a scene, by the way.
What a scene. You mentioned Albed earlier. When I was in year 8, so I would have been about 13, and then year 9, I used to write in Albed on my textbooks at school.
Yeah, I remember doing that too.
I printed out a cipher because at the time
my God,
I hadn't...
that's so cool.
I hadn't fired... Yeah, I mean, I was so cool.
No, it's cool. I think it's cool. I don't give a fuck what anyone says.
We do now, Jack. But I used to write secret messages. My friend Rachel also was really into Final Fantasy, so we used to sometimes write about Kingdom Hearts and stuff together and watch videos and read fanfics and stuff. But yeah, I used to write in Albed, and I actually used to have a cipher that I would tuck into my little notebooks at school, and just it was the one from the game. Because obviously in the game, you find all the individual ciphers, right? So you find all the textbooks and you slowly build out the language. And if I remember right, it changes the color of some of the letters to the right thing. So you start to be able to piece together. And even now, parts of it are in my head. Like we were talking before this podcast and you were like, so you know Albed? And I was like, oh, we know Albed because we is you. And it's just little silly things like that. And it's interesting when you said about this podcast and you said, what's your favorite Final Fantasy? I would be lying if I said that 7 was not technically my favorite Final Fantasy. The reason I decided to go with 10 is for a lot of reasons. I think they are both my favorites. They are both very close. 10 and 7 really do sit on a pedestal for me. I think the only reason personally that 7 edges it slightly for me is how much more world building there is. With the compilation, there's all those really compelling, relatable real-world themes like trauma, eco-terrorism, scientific development. I think 7 does a lot for subversion of the typical fantasy genre. It gets very steampunk, very sci-fi noir, very industrial. Those elements are incredibly different to something like 10, which does feel more grounded in traditional fantasy. I mean, as much as obviously Western fantasy is nowhere near like Western fantasy when you have dragons and dungeons and knights and medieval settings, but it still feels much less sci-fi, I guess. But the reason that I chose 10 is because 10 is my first full-time Final Fantasy, my first proper game that I played in the series. So it is my first Final Fantasy, and therefore it was my entry point into the series, and it has a very special place in my heart. And the other reason is that I think, as much as I love it, 7 gets so much airtime to the point where it's almost the safe. I was talking to Daryl actually from Final Fantasy Union about this recently, and I'd love to talk about 10 more, not only because it was incredibly formative for me, but because I've talked about 7 to death, right? And I love 7, but 7 is almost the safe and expected answer at this point. Most people's favorite Final Fantasy is 7 or 8. Mine is 7, it is. But I think it only really edges past 10 for some of those more complex themes. I do think 10 still is absolutely phenomenal. I didn't realize at the time, because it was the first Final Fantasy that I ever came to, I didn't realize that it was actually quite a departure from the rest of the series, because it's so much more linear than obviously 7, 8, 9. There isn't that element of open world. They've kind of got rid of that and pushed you more into sort of bigger open areas, sure, but they are very much still on rails, and that linearity is kind of what you sort of lose, I suppose, with having it less open, means you get more intense cinematics, and you get, it's the first entry on PS2. We had a huge graphical upgrade. We had full dialogue VO storytelling. They actually focus more on characters. And I think the party in 10 is one of the strongest bunch of characters in the whole franchise, for sure.
Yeah.
And that is something that I think I really, really fell in love with. It had a really profound effect on me as a kid. And I can say, I don't think I would be the Final Fantasy fan that I am without 10. So it's the perfect angle as a fresh discussion point away from 7, which has been done to death, to talk about why this might be a great entry point for other people. Because I always think if anyone's going to get into Final Fantasy for the first time, point them in the direction of 10. Give them 10, man. Throw them 10. And they'll have a great time.
I only rolled credits on this very recently. I mean, obviously, we talked about my history with this game quite a bit on the podcast about how when the PS2 came out, I didn't get a PS2. And I remember crying in Asda because I saw Final Fantasy 10, PS2,
Who among us hasn't cried an Asda?
Years later, I got into it, but I think from rolling credits on it, I think you're right in a lot of ways. It is one of those ones that you could probably get people into the series with, because it's, in a way, like, it takes a while to click with the battle system if you're used to 7, 8, and 9, or even some of the later
but
titles.
If you're more of a kind of classic RPG turn-based person, like if you played a lot of Pokemon, it's ideal.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or Persona as well, Persona 4.
Yeah.
It's sort of like when you realise, hang on a minute, I can sit here like and just sort of like look at the screen and nothing's going to happen unless I click a button.
Yeah.
You completely like divorce yourself from ATB from the other games. If you think of it like the ATB stuff, you really struggle. I did. I mean, especially on the talked about bosses. I can never remember the name of it. It's the one that you fight. I think it's just before Unalesca, where it's the boss that's you got the six platforms you're on, and the boss like counter attacks the ones that are in front of it. I can never remember what it's called.
Oh god, I know what you mean. Yeah.
But you have to plan your turns.
Yeah.
To beat it.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I remember thinking, how the fuck do I do this? I was getting so frustrated.
Yeah.
And I looked online and I went,
tactical,
okay.
isn't it? Way more strategic.
But really good for that, I think. And it's definitely not really something that the series certainly some of the spin-offs I might not have played it, but I don't think it's gone back to that before.
No,
it's quite an interesting avenue.
I thought it really was as well. I liked so much about it that, again, it's tricky because I came to it first, so I obviously didn't have as much to compare it to. So then when I jumped into 7 after I'd played 10, I remember screaming because I was like, oh my god, they're attacking me still? Why is everyone just not calming down and having chill? Where are you? I haven't attacked yet, I haven't made my move. And then I realised that ATB is a thing. But yeah, it's battle system aside, for sure, the sphere grid is also, much like the turn-based, slower-paced system, is quite accessible, I thought, in comparison to things like the junction system, which are a little bit of a, we all love 8, I love 8, but it is a bit of a head fuck sometimes. I really struggled when I was a kid to understand the junction system. Big learning curve. The sphere grid's pretty easy. It's kind of very stripped back and very reminiscent of like what a lot of progression trees are in modern day games now, sort of PS3, PS4 and beyond. So it is simplistic, but it still kind of worked because you've still got to kind of like advance your character, learn new skills. If you really wanted to grind, you could put them round and they could get different abilities and go in slightly different directions and stuff. It wasn't probably as fluid as like another job system would have been, but I still think, it really, the more I think about it, the more I think 10 is the entry level. I almost wonder if they planned that. I almost wonder if they thought, right, new console generation, PS2 is coming out, let's make something that is a little bit less complicated, both in battle system and in progression system. Let's make a fantastic bunch of characters. Let's have a love story at the center of it, but let's kind of, make it about this journey, about this pilgrimage, and not make it super open world and massive, but also we've now got the capabilities of the PlayStation to tell stories in a way more cinematic way. We can have cutscenes, seeing Sin bursting out of the boat, in that scene where he attacks the boat and there's water everywhere, and it's incredible. Like, that is something that my jaw dropped when I first saw that.
Especially considering that the PlayStation 1 FMVs, at the very least, they're they're very nostalgic and we love them, but they are very dated these days as well.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, Final Fantasy X and X-2, they actually kind of still hold up. Like, there's definitely stylistic, but they look fantastic even 20 years on.
Absolutely. And the gameplay as well. Like, I mean, away from just like the CGI cutscenes, like, they look incredible. Like, obviously we've had HD remasters and stuff, but they don't look that bad, even like the sort of the worlds and the backgrounds and stuff. Like, they've designed everything really well. The sending is still a scene that I just think is so breathtaking. Like, as of both like a visual design, but also just a really haunting moment, and the music. Oh, it's incredible. It's an amazing game.
Just to jump on that as well, I think the scene with the Blitzball, so when Sin attacks Anakin with the Blitzball as well, like the water there and lean back there.
The water on Tidus's like body. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, hey, I'm just going to do a humble brag here. I always knew it was Tidus. I have had so many arguments. Mr. Robert Pearson, I see you. We used to have like debates in the office and he'd be like, it's absolutely Tidus. And I'd be like, but it's Tidus because it's Japanese. Like, the I sound is an E sound in Japanese. And also, not being funny, but Waka totally says it in Kingdom Hearts. He even says Tidus in Kingdom Hearts. And still, Tidus. To this day, for the last 10 years, people have been going, it's Tidus actually. And then finally, when it was confirmed, I was like, oh, don't we feel silly now? But do you know what? I will concede that Tidus sounds better.
It does.
Because it's tide, water.
Yeah, exactly. Blitzball, the ocean, Sin, 100%. It does feel more like Tidus should be it. But Tidus it is.
Tidus it is. Well, I still stand by it being Sifa in Final Fantasy VIII, though. That's the hill I will die on.
Sifa.
Because he looks like he's Kiefer Sutherland. Like, I'm pretty sure he's got the vibe from The Lost Boys.
As long as you don't say Yuffie. Because every time someone says Yuffie, I want to be sick in my mouth. Sorry.
Tiff is another one that comes up.
See, I used to call her Tifa when I was a kid, and it took a really long time to switch over to Tifa.
Fine. Yeah, I think that's okay. I think I called him Sifa, and then I realised it was Cypher.
It is Cypher.
It is technically Cypher. But Cypher makes me think of the Pokemon. So...
yeah, Cypher makes me think of the villain in The Matrix. But
oh, yeah, of course,
there's your Matrix reference for this week. So I think it's interesting now just to dig on that a little bit more with the pronunciation and stuff, because obviously we just like jokingly disagree with that. That is something that's part of it, though, because it's probably this game kind of changed that, because of course then the voice acting came in, and I think the reason that's contentious is because no one actually says Tidus/Tidus/Tidus.
He's the only one you can rename.
Trevor's name.
This is something I really wanted to touch upon, actually. Sorry, Jack, you go first.
No, it's because like everyone else finally gets their names said in this game, so everyone remembers what the characters say.
Yeah.
With the other games before this, and again, adding to another dimension to it, the fact the translations were all different, like Bart's butts and all sorts of stuff like that. Sellers, we both say sellers differently from 6 and stuff like that. It's really interesting how like people still jumped on the one name that no one mentions and said it differently.
Yeah, exactly. I suppose that was why, in a way, because they were kind of like, well, it is open to interpretation because everyone else actually has their names pronounced in the game. But I wanted to talk about that because that was something that I thought was actually really clever, in that I guess it was almost appealing to 2 different kinds of audiences, really. Because again, if you think of 10 as an entry-level game, designed almost as an entry-level game, first up on the new hardware, ready to pull more people into the franchise, bigger graphics, a great story, really cinematic, I did always think it was strange that no one said his name throughout. And I was never really fully aware of it until maybe like I played it through a couple of times. But obviously that's because you can name him whatever you want to name him at the beginning, right? So I wasn't sure. Feel free to like if I'm completely off base, but I thought that was the case. Can you name the other characters? Can you name like
No,
Yuna
Tidus is the only one that you can rename.
That's
it, right, cool. So
you can name the Aeons.
Perfect, you can name the Aeons. So that's the thing then, right? You can call him whatever you want to call him. So the developers and the designers of the game did something quite creative there, where they were like, right, if you want to call this guy Dave, you can absolutely call him Dave.
Dave the Blitzballer. I love that.
Dave the Blitzballer. Dave will be, Dave from the Zanuck and Daves for the entire game. And actually, how cleverly designed and written is that actually we're not going to take that away from you.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was really, really like, it must have been a real puzzle for them. They must have been sitting there going, do we give the protagonist a name? Because we've given them, the audience, the ability to change the name of the protagonist in every other game so far. So they're going to miss it if we don't do it here. We should absolutely let them call it whatever they want to call it. Especially because, a lot of people like to call it themselves, don't they? I've never been that person, but some people do actually name it in their image, which is just really strange. But anyway, imagine you want to call it your own name. You can do that, but how the hell are we going to get around the fact that now we've got voiceover dialogue?
Yeah. And I think one of the things that a lot of lay people don't understand is when you're writing, it's, in dialogue, it's really easy to, like, I don't really think you or I or Jack have actually said each other's names particularly much this episode, because that's not really a thing that you do. But when you're writing something, you kind of need to
storytell, you need to.
Yeah.
You need to.
And it's really, really difficult to completely omit a word or a name. So the fact that they were able to do that consistently throughout the entire game is actually really, really well done.
Really impressive. And for it not to feel weird that they don't say his name. Do you know what I mean? Because they talk about him and they say you, and Yuna even manages, and I guess this is a testament to like Hayley Burris' voice actor and also like the scripting and the dialogue in general, but she manages to say you in a way that feels tender. Like it implies a relationship between them, even though she's never actually said his name. No one in the game says his name. I am always gagged at that. I really am. Like every time I come back to 10, I'm always like, that is so clever. It would have been so easy for them to have just given him a name and had the name be recorded and in the script. And it also would have been so easy for them to have just used the typical trope of you can name your protagonist, but then decide to go against the dialogue, right? They could have just done that.
Yeah.
But they were like, nope, we want VO, we want dialogue, we want to make it really cinematic. Here's how we're going to very creatively, through a very clever script, make it so that his name is never said and we never really think about it. I just love that.
Totally.
I think
So
something
cool.
absolutely fantastic in the overall script writing, and this extends beyond 10 as well, is that you never hear his name in 10-2 either. Like, they managed to create 2 whole games where you never hear that man's name. Like, he could very, very easily be, I miss Dave. Okay, well, we'll go and get Dave while we're being the Gullwings. Like, you don't do that, ever.
Yeah.
What can I do for Dave?
What can I do for Dave? Sutaki da Dave.
I love that.
But it's so true. And I think going back to like characterization and like sort of key differences too, one thing I loved about Tidus when I was playing it was that, I mean, obviously I came to 10 first, so I hadn't experienced Squall and Cloud, but looking back now, retrospectively, everyone who'd played 7, 8, and 9, I guess Zidane is a little different, but you were quite used to this idea of a very angsty, very emo, brooding, mysterious protagonist like Cloud and Squall. I mean, literally named so, the weather, right? Like, they are in themselves a pathetic fallacy. They are characters that do embody that sort of like very grumpy, very like sort of low energy, brooding emo boy vibe. And I liked that Tidus was actually just like a fucking Labrador. And he kind of resembles us a lot. He's a lot like the player because he's quite new to everything. And you're getting the whole of this story. Like, Spira is being introduced to you at the same time that it's being introduced to Tidus. And it's also, you know, all the characters, the faith, you know, the summons, the Aeons, all of the concepts in it are foreign to him because he's only ever known Zanarkand.
Yeah.
So it makes the world building and it makes this like narrative arc so much smoother for us because he is a stranger in a strange land and so are we.
Yes.
Like, we are one and the same. We are seeing everything through Tidus's eyes. And he also fights for the very first time on screen with us.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
This is what I think is amazing. He's not a trained soldier. He's not a mercenary like Cloud was. He's not like Squall, who'd spent a lot of time in a weird training garden that floats for children for some reason. Less said about that, the better. But he isn't a fighter, you know? He grabs that sword for the first time and he looks like a right twat with it. He really, really does. You see him stumble over. Oren's watching him. I mean, I can't do it when you're watching me, Oren. And he like runs forward and attacks some Sinspawn. He looks really clumsy and it's only really his natural athleticism because of Blitzball that kind of like makes him a fighter. But he's never wielded a sword before and we do it for the first time with him. So he's the ultimate newbie protagonist in a way.
Yeah,
That's a good point.
And it again, like going back to, it's really difficult to make that work. Like, incredibly difficult to introduce someone to a new world, a new cast, a new everything, and then ease them into it without making them feel like, okay, well, press X to run. You know, it's so difficult to actually do that. And by having a completely fresh slate with Tidus and waking up in a new world and not having that experience is such a good onboarding process for the player as well.
Massively, yeah.
Really good introduction as well. I mean, I think it's interesting because obviously the beginning of the game, you're in Zanarkand, and I mean, it's not too otherworldly looking Zanarkand. It does look quite industrial.
Metropolis. Yeah, it definitely has a kind of more technological feel cityscape, isn't
Yes.
it? Yeah.
But I think because of that, because it's more like the real world we're in, you kind of relate to it a lot more, and it feels like home. So obviously, like for Tidus or whatever, he's wanting to go back to that place, and you kind of feel home there as well. And Spira feels more otherworldly, Wizard of Ozzy,
Yeah, absolutely.
sort of like
Feels more
explains
like a whimsical fantasy land, doesn't it?
quite well done. The only problem with that Zanarkand area is it's the worst version of the Final Fantasy prelude ever made.
Yeah.
The one that's like...
yeah,
I know exactly what you mean, yeah. The beginning of Final Fantasy X always used to really remind me of the movie Cloverfield. I don't know why. I think
That's
Yeah,
one
I
of my
think I know what you
top
mean.
films of all time, and I've never made that connection.
it's because of the sin spawn. They look...
Oh,
it's a
shit.
Yeah.
Massive creature turns up, right? Huge
Yeah.
creature comes out of the ocean. Obviously, the Cloverfield monster doesn't look like Sin necessarily aesthetically. They're not too similar. But it comes out the ocean, it wreaks havoc on a big city at night, and then it literally has these like parasitic monsters that spawn off of its body and land on the floor and run after people and attack them. And actually, Sin's base opens up in that way. Those little synth-spawn things, they do look
I
a lot like the
clearly
monsters
haven't
from
played
Cloverfield.
10 recently enough or watched Cloverfield enough because my mind's
film.
being blown right now, actually.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's always reminded me of that. There's definitely an element of, fun. I'm pretty sure, I remember Googling it at one point, and somebody on Reddit was like, has anyone ever noticed that FF10 and Cloverfield are really similar at the beginning? And I was like, yeah, they kind of are. But I think it's a combination of like the setup of like Sin invading the city, but also like the creatures themselves. Like those little Sin spawn things do look like Cloverfield monsters to me.
Yes.
Thank God no one
yeah.
blows up when they get bitten by one.
Oh my God, that woman's head.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the worst thing.
Good movie. I really enjoy found footage
My hot
movies.
take is that I think Cloverfield is actually really underrated and everyone hates
Correct.
it.
Yeah, no, no.
Correct.
I don't know why.
I like found footage movies. There's a movie called As Above, So Below, where they go into the French catacombs. I really like that movie. I know it's a bit of a throwaway sort of cheapo horror flick, but I like the POV found footage stuff. You know, it's terrifying, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, I'd never actually go into the French catacombs, so at least I can experience it that way. So
Absolutely. Yeah. Maybe one day.
After all of that introduction, then, biggest question that we're going to ask today, who's your favourite character?
Oh my God. I love Lulu. I love Lulu so much. Mother. She is the absolute, we talked about drag queens earlier. She is the queen of queens. I just think she is so sassy. She is like one giant eye roll throughout the whole
She
of
really,
this
really
game.
is.
And I love her so much because, again, she's kind of all of us, right? There are moments where she's just like, ugh. But like, she is so... Waka and her, I love their story because you forget, actually, when you sort of play 10, that they have almost like a slightly strange relationship because at first they almost feel like brother and sister, and you're a bit like, are you guys like... Is there a thing between you? Like, she puts him down constantly. She's very matriarchal with the whole group. Like, she says it like it is. She's no nonsense. Waka is very much under her thumb. And then you kind of come to realize that it's a very complex relationship because she was actually in love with his brother. And Chapu dies, and slowly but surely, you know, she manages to, I guess, you know, she falls in love with Waka, and they do eventually have a baby in the second game. But it's just really funny because part of you thinks she hates him, part of you knows that she does have a lot of affection for him. And I think that's a very clever relationship to balance. And she can say everything in just a look. Yeah. That's what I love about Lulu. There's a moment where Waka is like, she's berating him, naturally, because she's always berating him. And we love to see it. It's really funny. She's having to go at him for something, and he's like, I can't remember what he says, but he tries to defend himself, and she says, whose fault is that? And he goes, not mine. And then she doesn't say anything. She literally doesn't say anything. She just looks at him, and he goes, it is mine, huh? And it's like any woman who can literally look at a man and go, huh? And he just goes, yeah, okay, it is my fault. And I just love the way that she mothers Tidus a little bit. I love how affectionate she is with Yuna. She is the mum of the whole team. And I just adore Lulu.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to dismiss her as like just cold and unfeeling, but that couldn't be more incorrect.
No, she's so well written.
There's a soft layer underneath, isn't there? Especially like, I can't remember the exact quote. I think it's on the airship, and I don't think it's fighting Sid. I think it's might be the other fight you do on top of the airship. I think it might be after that, but it's certainly a bit where you jump off the airship. It might even be when you're fighting Sin. And there's a point where Lulu turns to Tidus and says, you've just got an overwhelming sense of you never give up, do you? And you sort of can see that he's got through to her. And then actually she's like, has this sort of like stern look of like, oh, no, whatever, I'm ambivalent to everything. But actually she really cares underneath. Yeah. And he like, his sort of like kind of annoying, I'm not going to not be myself, like energy, like gets through to her. And that's the part where I thought I really get Lulu now. Yeah. Just got this shell round her. Yes. And it's brilliant, really good character.
Absolutely, yeah. You're right. Tidus's relentless optimism does eventually become infectious to her. And I think as well, she is like, you don't really realize, you think she's cold just for cold's sake, but she's also grieving a lot. Like, she's lost the love of her life. And actually, when you do speak to Lulu, I think there's a moment when they're in the far plane and she sees Chapu. She says she's ready to let go. Yeah. And Tidus sort of says to her, maybe there will be another man for you. Like, maybe Waka, like next best thing. The dorky older brother of Chapu's right over there. And Lulu sort of like looks at him and she's just like, I can't remember what she says, but she's like, that will never happen. But obviously it does. And you know at that point that
Famous
she likes
Waka.
Yeah. And it's just like, there's a real playfulness between them that I like.
brilliant. As I finished the game recently, I sort of like most of the cast kind of got in there in terms of like real affection for them, because I think the dynamic between all of them as well, and the way that they're sort of written with the fact I think they're pretty much all together the whole time. I think there's a bit where Yuna's not there, and Riku takes a while to get into the party, but once they're all together, they're on the same journey together for a long period of the game, which is quite unusual in the Final Fantasy game, because most of the time you get the split off and stuff like that, and they tell the story through the tension.
Or they split, like you say. No, they are in it together. There is a real family sense building, and I think 7 and 10 are the two, to me, that do this really well, that build up a huge party and keep them together for a long time, and actually have you on the journey visit destinations like Kimari's hometown, like our bed home, you know, where Riku's from. Like, actually, same thing happens in 7 with like Barrett's hometown when you go to Corral and Nibelheim and stuff. Like, you actually flesh out the characters you're traveling with at the same time. So it's sort of like a 2-for-1 in terms of storytelling. Like, you're getting backstory as you're progressing through the adventure. And I think 10 and 7 both do that incredibly well.
Yeah, I agree.
Can we just say how fucking hilarious it is that most summoners seem to have like one guardian, maybe 2?
Yeah.
Yuna's like, hold my beer. I want an entire posse. One of them is going to be a giant cat for some reason. One of them is dead. And my boyfriend also should come along. And my cousin.
One of them's dead. I love it.
It's hysterical. She's just like, at the end, it's so funny how she's got like more and more guardians every day. Like, she's finding guardians on the back of the sofa. It's so funny.
Back of the sofa. I think the fucking weirdest thing about 10 for me was that, like, everyone in the party, okay, like, if you saw them walking down the street, they'd look outlandish as hell, but, like, you know, they form a cohesive party and they all fit into the world. But everyone else in Spirit doesn't know how to fucking dress. What is up with Donut? Every time Donut comes on screen and it's like, oh, here's my lover who is also my guardian and I only need one. And I'm like, where is the front and the back of your dress?
I mean, I feel like it's either one or the other. You either have really...
Go hard or go home, as they say.
Yeah, exactly. Either you dress like Donna or LeBlanc in 10-2.
Fucking love LeBlanc.
I love LeBlanc too. Or you dress as a grey shirt, grey shorts, literally nothing from the slums of Midgar, and the only colour running through the streets is Cloud and Tifa. Like, I don't understand it. Like, what I always think this when I play Remake, I'm like, why is no one else dressed normally? Like, everyone is just wearing the same outfit. It's all greyish. It's all like really drab. Like, why can someone not just like put on a bit of colour? You know, like, everyone looks, I think they fixed it a bit in Rebirth. Felt the NPCs have had a bit of a glow up, but generally, it does feel a bit like, God, I remember watching Advent Children and like literally
that movie
everyone
is just grey the whole way through.
An NPC. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. That outfit with Donna. Oh God. Like, you don't know where to look, do you?
No, you don't. And you can't even look her in the eyes, because at that point she's just going to berate you for it as well.
Yeah. Oh, Donna's the worst. I quite like Kizaru. I thought Kizaru was kind of cool. He was okay. Bit of a whiny cow. But other than that, you don't really meet you do meet some other summoners, don't you? But no one seems to be doing it for as holy a reason, or at least as like a kind of pure reason as Yuna. Everyone feels a bit like they're doing it for influencers, you know? Like,
hashtag summoner.
They've been in Love Island and now they're like, my career's drying up. I'm going to go and be a summoner because it's the cool thing to do.
I would watch Final Fantasy Love Island.
Final Fantasy Love Island. Spirit Love Island, yeah. No, I think it's interesting. I think a lot of that sort of tells the story, though, is that you find other people on the same pilgrimage as you, and because they're a bit less spoken about or less prolific, it kind of eggs you on to carry on with your journey, kind of thing.
Absolutely.
That's kind of what they're trying to tell there. Yeah
100%. And you get so much from, like, one thing that does make me laugh so much is Waka. Oh my God, they're on a holy pilgrimage to purge the world of sin. Again, we haven't even got into all the religious connotations of all this yet. And the whole point is to save the world and wipe out this tyranny of this giant monster. And Yuna is eventually going to sacrifice herself at the end, and only a few people know that. Tidus comes to that notion quite late.
Yep.
On the way, Waka's like, sure, okay, let's all be your guardians and everything, but by the way, we are going to stop off for a big football match.
Yeah.
And Yuna's kind of like,
man.
Sure, yeah, can you imagine? Yes, we are going to go on this giant pilgrimage. Yes, holy, 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 praise Yevon. But also, I can't possibly miss this match. I need to watch this Blitzball match. We need to make sure we make the finals on the way, right? I just think that's so funny. No one really clocks that they're kind of going on this epic journey, but Waka's like, but first, sports.
I think that's the real reason she decides to marry Seymour, because she's like, well, you've had a football game, I'm going to have a wedding. Fuck you.
I want a tangent.
Honestly, I feel like 10 is one of those ones that everyone like rightfully acknowledges as actually being relatively serious, despite the, you know, really comfy backgrounds and the really saturated colors and stuff. It's so fucking funny at so many different points. And Waka is the leader of comedy in this game. Like, the one that always gets me, and it always shocks me a little bit, but it's when home explodes and, you know, all the Albed are like either escaping or dead, and it's like, it's genuinely terrible. And this man turns to Riku and is like, lol, fireworks. Like, how much more insensitive can you fucking get? It cracks me up
Waka
every time.
is just like, he's just so dumb, isn't he? Like, in a loving way. He's just that kind of like slightly dim, non-tactful. You obviously realise that he's very much been indoctrinated by the teachings of the church, and that obviously comes undone. So he's almost like, he's a bit of a simpleton, you know? He's not really had much life experience. And
actually, he's very easy to make fun of, and like I'll be number one leader of that conversation. But I think one of the really big bits of Waka's character for me is when Operation Mihen is happening, and all the Machina is around, and Waka, you know, in his religion, rightfully so, is like, what the fuck is going on? Why is all this stuff here? And he actively asks Seymour, like, what is going on here? You're a maester, you shouldn't be doing this. And Seymour himself is like, pretend you didn't see it.
Seymour literally is like, just turn a blind eye. Yeah.
And then Waka's like, you can't say that, you're a maester. And then Seymour immediately is like, then pretend I didn't say it. And it's like, this man, he is nothing but comedy relief, but he grapples with some really, really big things. And again,
really dark
like
things,
going back to the whole, it's really difficult to write a game this long and not mention you know, the main character's name at any point. It's really, really difficult to write a really stupid comedic character, but also have that complete opposite effect and feel sorry for him and really understand what he's going through. Like, 10 isn't my favorite game in the franchise, but I will absolutely defend it to the death. It does a lot of things very, very right.
I think so. I think with Waka as well, I think it's a really good telling of I don't know if the word racist is right, because he's prejudiced against the Albed.
He is, yes.
But he learns from, like, a lot of that he's got from the church, the faith, and what he's been told about the Albed. And then when he gets to know some of them, he changes his mind. So it tells a really good, like, because there's people like that across the world. They're obviously horrible,
Waka is the kind of
racist
person
people
who would read something on Facebook and believe it. You know,
exactly.
Like,
So
he probably would vote for Trump at the beginning, and then I'm not saying Waka's a Trump supporter, but I feel like he would be all make Spira great again until he realized like the plight of the real people involved, and then he'd be like, okay, yeah.
Make Spira great, and then he realised Donald Trump doesn't actually like Blitzball. And he's like, what?
He's going to ban Blitzball? Yeah, no, exactly.
We're all imagining Donald Trump dressed as Seymour now, aren't we?
Oh, I wasn't until you fucking said that. Oh my god.
Put it on the thumbnail. Put it on the thumbnail, you cowards.
Yeah, wow, that's a film.
Yeah, you're so right though. Like, he doesn't really, his faith comes crashing down, and he's only really known what he's known, and it's also very personal to him because it aligns with the death of his brother. You know, his brother died through, you know, joining the Crusaders, so therefore he hates Machina and he hates Albed and he hates it all, and it's under the guise of religion, but it's also driven by some very personal motives as well.
Yeah. On the back of all that, then, do you have a character that you don't like particularly in the main cast?
Well, me and Alex Young make this joke to each other all the time. I don't think it's fair to say what is the point of him, because he does have a point, even though it's broken. Kimari, I just
knew it was coming.
Everyone knows it's coming.
I thought you were going to say Oren then. I nearly had a heart attack.
No, excuse you. Oren is a king, and I will stand by Oren. Oh my god, I love Oren so much. When I went to CooperCon, it was the first time I've ever done cosplay, and I went as Renoa, and you had this thing where you had to give, like, you each got a coupon, and you had to give your coupon to the person you thought was dressed the best, and I chose an Oren cosplayer. He was incredible.
I do remember at the end of the second Final Fantasy Union quiz, I caught Ben Starr as he was leaving, and I was in a conversation with a bunch of other people, and we were happening to talk about cosplay at the time. So Ben Starr is going down these stairs, and I go, Ben, not Clive, if you had to cosplay anyone from Final Fantasy, who would you cosplay? Man did not even take 5 seconds to call back Auron, and then he was out of that place.
Auron, see you later.
Yeah, pretty much exactly what happened.
Yeah, Auron's amazing. I love Auron so much. And he's one of the best characters in the game as well, in terms of, like, you come to rely on him for his strength and for his wisdom and his kind of, like, pseudo-father relationship with Tidus in the absence of Jack. So, yeah, I did love Auron a lot. Kimahri, I don't dislike at all, but I think it's the kind of running joke of the series that Kimahri's just sort of there. When you do get to the Ronso tribe, you get to Mount Gagazet, like, obviously you get that moment where he confronts his tribe and he was shunned from them. He was sort of sent away because of his horn was broken and it was a source of shame. And I can't remember what they call him, but me and Alex used to do it to each other and I've forgotten what it was, but it's like small horn or like short horn. They call him
no
something.
Horn, isn't it? So no horn?
No,
No
he's
horn.
a broken horn.
No horn. Yeah. Whatever they do, they shout something at him and it's really mean. But also not at all original. And it's just really funny. And yeah, he kind of gets his own back on the bullies, basically. Kimahri's arc is that he gets his own back on the people that sort of wronged him. And he gets the
Seymour
respect
kills
of his
every single
tribe.
one of them.
And then, yeah, exactly. And he doesn't really express any kind of, he gets angry, but he doesn't really, you don't see him go down on like more on the bodies of his brothers or anything. Like, you don't get any
it's
of
a bit
that.
weird, that, isn't it?
And I just think Kimahri is, as a character, I just never really warmed to his battle
Yeah.
style.
No.
I never really used him at all.
No, I'm the same way.
They definitely had a dud there with Kimahri. Sorry, Kimahri.
I think so. I find it interesting that I think it was one of the boss battles. I think it might have even been that battle on top of the airship where like I cared about Kimahri so little that I was using every other character and like they were all running low on health and I was like, wait, hang on, I could just like get him in. He's got to put his overdrive on and like finish the boss off. So he tended to be the character that finished the boss off for me only because I hadn't bothered using him very much.
Yeah, and you bring him in as a blocker as well to block damage while someone else is on the bench. Yep,
Yeah,
I've done that
exactly,
too.
yeah.
Yep, sorry, Kimahri. I think this is a Kimahri apologist podcast.
The meat shield Kimahri, yeah.
I don't even necessarily want to call it a criticism, just observation of Kimahri that I remember seeing, like 15 plus years ago, was discussion of the voice work in Final Fantasy X, which we can talk about next as well. But someone mentioned that Kimahri is what happens when you give John DiMaggio a cough drop, and that has never left me, ever.
That is so true. Actually,
Right?
Yeah.
You'll never forget it now.
Yeah, I can never unhear it.
But yeah, the voice work I always found pretty decent, actually.
Yeah,
like,
it was
especially
really
for
good.
a first time voice work in Final Fantasy.
Yes, absolutely. Considering they were going in for the very first time and they didn't really know what they were doing, there has been so many bad dubs of games at that point, and I thought,
Chill sandwich.
well, exactly.
See, I was thinking, have you seen a little girl?
Oh God.
I always think of House of the Dead. I was talking to one of my colleagues about this the other day.
Nearly spat my water out there.
House of the Dead is one of the examples of video game dialogue so bad it's actually brilliant. Like, I couldn't do it. As a voiceover artist, I could not do that. It would actually be so difficult to do it. But I'm trying to get into what do they do? There's a moment where, like, you see a character and literally your protagonist goes, "Oh no, he's dead."
Yeah.
And then he's like, "Why would anybody do this?" And you're like, are you AI or are you like actually a real human? We should probably talk about the dialogue side of things, the laughter scene, because that gets such a bad rep in 10.
We talked about this in our episode with Alleyway Jack as well, yeah.
Always defend it. And I don't defend it because it's not cringy. Of course it's cringy. It's ridiculously
Supposed to be,
cringy.
though.
It's horrible to watch. It's designed to make you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But it's actually not bad acting. And everyone says it's terrible acting. I can't believe that scene. It's terrible acting. And it's like, it's not. The whole point is that they are pretending to laugh whilst they're feeling sad.
Yeah.
Therefore, they are sounding horrible and unnatural. And if I remember correctly, they end up sounding so stupid that they make each other actually laugh. And then it's normal. Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is like, oh, it's bad acting. And that's the only example you ever pull out. If it was bad acting, you would have more.
You'd have more, yeah.
We mentioned this in the Alleyway Jack episode, I think, as well, like where a lot of the quote-unquote bad acting was because I don't know the ins and outs of the technical side of it, but they needed to make the voice lines last a certain amount of time for it to work within the game's engine.
Yeah.
So that's why you get, I think I even mentioned it there, where like you get to the wedding and then like Yuna's about to jump and Tyler goes, "No, don't do it." And it's like it has to fit in that period of time. And I think it gets a bad rap because of some of that stuff as well, which is just a sign of the times more than anything, isn't it, really?
Yeah,
you know?
definitely. Some of the Tidus in particular, like, fucking hell, there are so many moments where he goes off on one and his voice, I just think his voice act, is it James Arnold?
James Arnold Taylor.
Yes, I think, because I had like a DVD on the PS2 version of the game that I had.
Oh yeah, that came with the
behind
game.
scenes. Yeah, I think there's an interview with him and Hayley Burris on there, and yeah, I just like, I could not believe some of the raw emotion he manages to get out during those scenes, particularly with Orin, because Orin is in place of Jack the father-shaped daddy issues punching bag that he needs to get through his day. So sometimes he will just like go off on one at Orin. And when he finds out as well about Yuna and everything and that the fact she's going to die, like some of those scenes were so impactful. Like I really remember thinking like, I mean, it made me cry as a kid. And if the dialogue and the audio was that bad, I don't think it would have done.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I think as well, it's one of those things that, I mean, we talk about a lot on this podcast about, you mentioned there that a lot of people's favourite Final Fantasy is Final Fantasy VIII. And one thing I've noticed with Access that we mentioned before, when they first started out, they just spoke unironically about how good Final Fantasy VIII is, and a lot of games media in the UK did. Obviously, it's been reinvented, is my point, that no one's ever liked Final Fantasy VIII. And I think a lot of that is the same with 10, where people didn't have a problem with it at the time, but they've reinvented that it's not very good because it doesn't compare to modern day stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, it's I think the scene where I can never, it's the piece of music that plays when you get onto the it's not the world map, it's the bit before Mount Gagazet, the big open area.
Oh, the calm, the plains, the calm.
Yeah, the plains music, the music that plays there plays later on when Yuna's recording her sphere.
Yeah.
That part of that performance where Yuna's voice actress Hedy Burris, when she performs that thing where she's basically just like she's writing her own eulogy, is just really, really heart-wrenching. It's an excellent bit of performance. And I think a lot of that is probably based off the fact that there was probably more time for her to say stuff because there wasn't that, limitation of having to get a line in against the next one. So really, really good scene. It's not the best voice acting game ever. It's not pushed the boundaries, but it's not as bad as everyone says.
No,
certainly.
Absolutely not. And like I say, I think with that scene in particular, I just tried to kind of be like, you do realize that's the point.
No,
but I understand why people use it because it is cringy. It's horrible.
Yeah. It's a funny meme though, isn't it? Like,
it's a great meme. It's pure meme fodder.
Comparatively then, do you think the voice acting in 10.2 is on the same level or worse or better?
I mean, I need to go back and play 10.2 again. Do you know what? I never finished 10.2, which is appalling because I remember playing it first and then obviously came back to play 10 and then was like, oh, okay, I'll play 10.2 at some point. But I think at that point I'd already kind of got stuck into 7 and I loved 7 and I
there
played
you go,
Crisis
Death
Core
Spiral.
as well. There you go, there's the spiral. So
it never ends.
It never ends. And the backlog was huge and I just never really went back to it and finished it. I don't even think I got that far in it, really. From what I remember, it was great. And I liked this sort of like, a lot of people kind of berate the whole Charlie's Angels thing. I just thought it was like a bit of fun, really. Yeah. Like it was just, video games at that point, there is a lot of sexualization with women in general. There always will be. But it felt like it was slight fan servicey, yes. But also it was just 3 women kicking ass, having a good time. Yeah. And because it was a sequel and the first time they'd done a sequel, I felt like if anything, it almost took itself less seriously.
Yeah.
And maybe that was why it was goofier for sure. And that's why I didn't really think about.
It feels like you can forgive it for more things.
Yeah. 10.2 is I don't think 10.2 is bad at all. And it definitely isn't a game that I'd put up there with the others, but it is what it is. And it was a very bold departure. And I felt like it felt a little bit more, like I say, a bit fan servicey, but also quite bold for them to have done that at the time and sort of just gone, actually, we're just going to focus on these 3 going out and doing missions. And it felt like in a modern, more contemporary game, it would have felt like DLC to me.
Yeah.
That very tonal shift.
It's interesting. Yeah. It's very Spice Girls.
It is. It is. And and the intro is fantastic. The song's fantastic. But yeah, I don't think it has the same merit as the other games in the series, for sure.
Completely valid take. And I'm glad that you brought up the introduction again, because this was something that you actually mentioned in the music festival questions for that PS Access podcast.
Yes.
You called Real Emotion on that episode a banger. And I wanted to really nail in on this. Most important question I'm going to ask all day. Real Emotion, is it truly a banger? Or is it a bop? Or is it a jam? Or does it simply slap?
I think it simply slaps. But I think it also veers slightly into bop territory. Mm-hmm. What I would say is a banger is 1,000 words.
Correct.
Yeah,
underrated song.
That.
Fantastic. I got the order right. Amazing. And it's not on Spotify. It's not anywhere.
What?
You can't listen to this song unless you go on YouTube. And I'm so bummed out that that's not a thing. I used to have it on my iPod Nano back in the day, and
she's
long
Jesus.
since dead. Yeah,
we've talked a bit before about Final Fantasy X too. I mean, I'm probably similar to you, Amy, is that I've not played that much of it, but I, as a younger person, I sort of like didn't really vibe with it that much. But I didn't really get to 10 till much later. But I think I've said before, and it's important to mention it again, that there were loads of the people that played Final Fantasy. There were loads of guys that said they didn't play this because it was quote unquote girly, but then could tell me everything about all the different endings. So they clearly played a lot more of it than they said. So it was a very much like one of those things no one would admit to liking, that was male from my experience,
Yeah. And like I say, it was I'm not saying this should be the case because it shouldn't be, but it was interesting that they went with female protagonist as opposed to just making another game where you play as Tidus in a different form or something. Like, I like that. I think Final Fantasy, when they do female protagonists well, they do them really well. You get the likes of Tifa and Aerith. You get the likes of Lulu. When you do them badly, they do them terribly. Like, Final Fantasy does struggle with writing women a lot of the time.
Yes, it does.
Unless, of course, you're Final Fantasy 6, in which case they're brilliant.
Six peaked. What? Go back to 6. Peak. Go back to 6. Honestly, 6 absolutely peaked. Oh, Terra is incredible. I hope they do more kind of in the future. I felt like they took a back step with 16 a little bit.
A big back step.
Massive back step. Like
16's biggest critic.
Here we go.
I don't even hate 16. I just think, what's the point of Jill?
Yeah.
Like, what's the point? And the only real good written female character in that game is Benedicta. And you take her out really quickly.
I would argue is
still very
sexualized. And it's strange because I know back in the day, and I think this is something that we've talked about previously, Jack, Final Fantasy has always been a series that's never been so adventurous that it's pushed the envelope every single time, but it has always tried something new.
It's always reinvented itself in some form. Yeah, definitely.
And then the last two major entries, 15 and 16, have been very, very safe in comparison. And then it's just very, very strange to look at in retrospect because you have the most recent entries and then you look back at stuff that was coming out 20 years ago with 10 and 10-2 and you go, what happened? Like, where did they decide to stop being overt with trying new things?
Sakaguchi's not there.
The only thing I disagree with was 16. 16 did try a lot of new things. 16 went in very different directions to the point where I actually wrote an article about it, defending it from being denounced as a Final Fantasy game because loads of people didn't want it to be a Final Fantasy game. They were like,
I remember seeing that a lot.
Yeah, and I wrote about it being like, it definitely is. It does the whole reinvention thing,
It's also called Final Fantasy 16.
It's called, it's in the name, guys. But I do think there were problems with 16. There were things I really liked about 16.
Yeah.
But I felt like 16 was actually quite a drastic departure, but not in the ways that we want. So I completely agree. Yes. I do think that, if you look back at 10 and 10-2, you're like, absolutely. Like, there was so much more they could have done. With 16, they were like, right, the biggest reinvention here, because Final Fantasy is an ever-growing reinvention every single time it comes out. We are going to go with a Game of Thrones approach. We are going to make them swear like sailors. We are going to make it incredibly dark, bloody, gritty, sexy. And then we're going to have them all British, all proper, like, right northern. That in itself is enough of a strange twist.
That's good.
Yeah. And that was quite fun. I enjoyed that a lot, actually. I loved Karen. Oh my God, Karen, what a hun. But then they, just made Jill wallpaper. Absolute wallpaper. Sexualized a lot of the other characters, but not in a way that really there wasn't really a big party that felt like it was, connected. It wasn't a group of people that you grew close to. Yes, the Hideaway had a few standouts, but generally they weren't people that travelled with you because obviously you were just Clive. You couldn't play as a party.
Rant.
Yeah, I thought with 16, they actually shook up the formula in a very interesting way, but it didn't pay off.
We pretty much said the same thing on our 16 episode. I've just thought of this analogy now, and it's probably a really shit analogy, but it feels like a Rubik's Cube where you've only solved one side.
I think that's a fantastic analogy.
I think that's a great analogy because they changed bits, but not the right bits. So they broke other bits in doing that, if that makes sense. They did. This is why I said, I do disagree in that they didn't change anything because they absolutely did change everything with 16, but it wasn't, you're so right. It was Rubik's Cube in that they didn't fix everything overall. They ended up making more of a mess.
Obviously, I think that the boss battle stuff is just fantastic. I think I said in one of our episodes, it might have even been our top 14 episode, I said about how it felt to me like it's the first time since those games that Mol mentioned there where they've been industry leading in something that was different. Like with that, I mean, obviously the boss battle stuff, you could argue it ties in with some of the sort of earlier quick time event stuff, but I think it really took that to the next level. And the fact it tied it in with the way the characters were relating to each other was probably the game's best strength, along with the voice acting. But I just think it's funny how probably one of the best female characters in the game is called Mid.
Yeah, literally Mid. Yeah, 100%.
Mid. Like, it just sums it up, doesn't it?
And even she is an extension of Sid. Do you know what I mean? Like, she's Sid's daughter. That's the reason that she exists. Yeah, it definitely felt like they went right back to the dawn of female characters in games. That was an area they really messed up in. But the rest of it, there were some really shining moments. The fact that it was the guy's name escapes me right now, but the Devil May Cry guy who directed the combat, did the combat for 16. Yeah, that felt like something that was kind of like really cool and new, and they were playing with a different sort of feel to the battle system completely. Again, a lot of people would argue that's not really Final Fantasy. Again, it reinvents itself so much that I feel like you have to kind of allow them that experimentation to try something new. Doesn't mean we're not going to see a turn-based game ever again, okay? I personally would be gutted if we didn't.
Are you serious, Amy? I think that this is the death of gaming and everyone should be held accountable.
I mean, I hope they do. If everything is just action RPG from here on out, I think that would be... But then you've also got like what Rebirth and Remake are doing, which is kind of a little bit of both. And I quite like
both,
that.
Which they've done really well,
yes,
I think.
They've done brilliantly well.
But Ryota Suzuki, Capcom veteran who worked on Devil May Cry.
That's him. So. That's the fella, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big Devil May Cry fan, so I thought the combat in 16 was fine.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the combat. I enjoyed the change of pace for sure, yeah.
It was nice to be able to actually like, I'm playing. A friend of mine's not a massive Final Fantasy guy because he doesn't really like ATB and stuff like that, but he really is a massive Devil May Cry fan. I was like, mate, you'll like this game. So it is in a way a weird, we talked about 10 being an entry point. I think in a way 16 can be an entry point in a different way.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that was probably their plan, truthfully. Yeah. I think they were probably thinking like, let's get more of the action fans in, let's cater to them, let's see what we can do with that. And I think, yes, in doing that, Rubik's Cubed completely and changed several other things that affected how great the characters were, affected the portrayal of women in the game, affected generally like the storyline in parts and the quests. Oh my god, the quests in 16 are the worst quests in a video game. I will stand by it. They are awful.
Yeah, they're pretty bad. They're also very reminiscent of the online game Final Fantasy XIV, for which a lot of CBU3 was taken off of and working on 16 as well. 16 is very, very similar to 14 in UI and in a lot of places gameplay as well. And if you've played 14, you'll understand. Unfortunately, it's not one of those things that's very easy to explain to people that haven't played the MMO.
No, I have. I've played 14 and I realised that as soon as I realised it was going to be go to this place, speak to this person, go to that place, speak to this person, ping, your little green thing pops off and you've done the quest. I was just absolutely mind-numbed. Whereas I think Rebirth and Remake did it brilliantly.
I'll be looking forward to finally getting around to playing Rebirth.
and shout out to that fucking town in the desert in 16 just to slag that off again.
I really hate
God.
I really hate that fucking town.
Bocklad? I
don't know why it's called, but it's just a pet hate for me in games. And I played this in Stellar Blade, which I think I'm playing at the moment. Yeah. It has the same problem where it will show you the sort of compass of where you need to go, and it'll say it's about 10 meters in front of you, but it won't take into account how high up it is, or the fact you've got to go back 300 feet and then round and up some stairs. That pisses me off in games, and that's the worst culprit I've seen in years. So fuck that town.
Absolutely. I'm sure it's Bocklad, but I know what you mean. I totally know.
Probably, let's have a look to see if it is Bocklad, because if it is Bocklad,
that's pushed out some information that I actually need to know.
I think it is Bocklad. I think you might be right.
Okay, we've talked a lot about the stuff that you really enjoy about Final Fantasy and your favourite characters and your favourite titles and stuff. What about the opposite? What kinds of things don't you like in the franchise? Just end this with some negativity.
Let's have some negativity, something I'm not really known for. I'm a very optimistic Labrador of a person.
As long as you don't say Final Fantasy 8, we can still be friends.
Yeah, could you imagine if I was like, 8's actually shit? No, 8 is... Cool. There goes my friendship with like 90% of the people I'm friends with in the industry. No, 8 is brilliant. I love 8. I really do love 8. I cosplayed as Renoa, for crying out loud. I love 8 so much. And 9, and 6, and 4, and 5. I have never played... I've played 2, actually. 2's quite good. With Firion, I've played 2. Never played 1 or 3, and I've never played 12 actually as well. So I can't really speak to 12. What I will say is that I tried really hard to make this an unpredictable answer, but I really can't. It is 13. And I'm sorry about it.
Yes!
I just feel like such a basic bitch, right? I know that 13 is the one that everyone hates. I tried so hard, guys. I really tried to come out with an answer that was like really insightful and innovative and make you all go, ooh, yeah, she had a point.
You've been hanging around with Mr. Pearson far too long.
No, nothing to do with Mr. Pearson. I played it long before I was even in the industry. I played 13 when it came out. I would have been like 17. I played it on launch day. 13 it's just... I think the thing that winds me up the most is that for everything we've just said about women in Final Fantasy, right? They finally were like, you know what? We're going to make a woman protagonist, a proper one. Obviously, we had Terra, Dabbles in 6, we had strong female characters, we had 10-2, but we're actually going to make a proper, original female character who's not been in any other mainline game as a supporting actress or like, you know, a supporting cast member. We're going to put her straight in at the top and she is going to be our leading lady for this game. They squandered that opportunity massively because what they did was they made Cloud as a woman.
See, I respectfully disagree with that opinion.
Go for it.
It's one of those things, and I'm sure Jack and I haven't recorded our Final Fantasy 13 episode yet, and I'm sure this is something that we'll get into the weeds
Because I've not finished it, because I agree with you, Amy.
I finished it. I've definitely finished it. But they literally made her hair the same as Cloud. They called her Lightning, and they were just like, right, here's
To be fair,
a woman.
everyone in 13 has a fucking stupid name.
They all have stupid names.
I did say that she was scoring her with tits, didn't I,
You did,
offline?
yeah.
I think.
They literally so lazy. They're just like, well, what do we know? How about we just give Cloud some tits and that will be our character? But yes, go. I want to hear Mol. Go.
The main thing that I've seen over the years is that they're both very broody and there's a lot going on and they're angry, and that was never the case for Cloud in OG. He was confused and he certainly ended up becoming broodier in later titles. Thank you, Advent Children, for ruining that for everybody. But Cloud is actually a pretty chill guy for the most part in 7 when he's not having his existential freakouts, and I mean, who among us isn't the same? Lightning is the way that she is for really realistic reasons. Like, she's had a real shit time of it, and then her sister goes and does something unforgivable, which is get engaged with a fucking idiot, and then goes and gets herself in like mortal peril. Like, yeah, I'd be pissed too. And the fact that Lightning loves her sister enough to go and actively rescue her, the fact that it starts on a train is just, okay, a train is a train. It could have been anything. I know there is something of a resemblance there, but then you could say that Cloud and Squall are the same. You could say that Tidus in his darkest moments is the same as Zidane in his darkest moments, and people don't compare everyone else the same way that Lightning is compared to previous people that came before, and I can't help but feel like a very big part of that is just an unrealized and internalized misogyny that everyone has as an unfortunate baseline. Lightning is held to unrealistic standards because she is a female character, and I know that's not the default, I know that's not the case for everybody, but I do think that does factor into it quite heavily.
That is a really good point. I think, you know, would we be saying this about her were she just another Cloud?
Yeah.
Like a male Cloud. We'd just be like, oh. I think we probably would. For me, the disappointment is because she is female, but not in any sense of like, we're holding her to a higher standard. It's the wasted potential of that. It's the idea of like, God, what could she have become if you'd really not used another character so much as a template?
That's fair.
When defining her, you know, I feel like there was so much more. I never really got attached to Lightning at all. I felt like she was very one-dimensional the whole way through. Cloud isn't, truthfully, like he isn't at all. He's a brilliant character. And I felt like, yeah, it kind of stems, I guess, more from disliking the final result as much as seeing some of the cut corners that went into it. But you are right. That's a really good point to raise in terms of like, how do we view female characters? Do we treat them differently? And do we kind of like have different perspectives on them because of male or female?
I wonder if the script was flipped and we were actually following Snow as the protagonist of the game, would we be comparing him to Tidus and to Zidane as opposed to Lightning to Cloud and Squall?
No, we probably wouldn't be, truthfully. No, we probably wouldn't. And I think it was, like I say, more... You're very right. We do look at Lightning with that harsher gaze slightly. And I think for myself, at least, it felt like wasted potential. It felt like, oh God, you know, you could have had a really cool character here. She looks great. Fair enough, you've given her Cloud's exact hair, but longer. But she could have been something really special, but there wasn't really enough there. I mean, truthfully as well, Snow is not an amazing character.
God, no, he's worse than Walker.
He's awful. He's absolutely awful. Hope is the least said about Hope, the better.
Fighting words. I have tussled with Jack before offline about this. I will defend that child with my life.
I like Fang though. Fang's a good character, I think.
This is the thing. Fang and Vanille, and this is kind of where I think the Lightning thing actually... Do you know what? Mol's right. This is a better comparison. Fang and Vanille are brilliant. If Fang had been the main character, I think that could have been an entirely different game. But Lightning is just, I'm sorry to say it, Mol, dull. Really,
well,
really
it's all right,
dull.
Amy. We can't always be right all of the time.
Can't always be right all the time. I will concede to be wrong in this instance. But yes, I didn't like 13, but I still played it, and I still finished it, and I still enjoyed it at various moments. But I will say, why the hell did they choose that one to make a 3? Like, of a trilogy.
Completely understandable.
I'm with you on that. My take on 13 is I'm not quite finished yet. I got to the big open world bit, and what frustrates me about it isn't necessarily the characters, because they're fine to me. It's the fact that you game over if you don't get the exact solution to every flipping battle you're in. That pisses me off. And it's like, for God's sake, it's like I've only got one solution to this particular battle with a flipping Aeon or whatever it's called in that game. So that, or Eidolon or whatever it's called. So that's annoying. But
I mean, as a 13 enjoyer, I'll be the first to admit, like, I don't understand why it got 2 sequels either. And I liked that game. So
the fact that there is nothing from Final Fantasy VIII, the fact that we didn't even get a tiny bit from Final Fantasy VIII, and then everyone's like, this is the worst one.
Do you know what I mean? In that time, that would have been amazing.
At least a sort of series sequel about Laguna, anything like that.
Oh my god, that would have been incredible.
Would be the best thing in the world. But no, we have to have a 13 2. From what I understand, 13 2 and 3 are actually better games in some way than Final Fantasy 13, from what I understand.
We'll talk about that later.
We'll get to them at some point. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it, 13? Because I sort of, one minute I'm like, I really love this bit, and the next minute I'm like, oh god, this is so dull, I hate it. Which is something that certainly we mentioned there, 15 and 16. I'm not an online guy, so I don't really know about 11 and 14, but they seem to have done that Rubik's Cube thing since 13. It's been a bit like that, where it's been, some things have been really good hits and people really like them, or something like Lightning, where it's a divisive thing, and that's the sort of thing you can argue about and discuss, or it's really dull.
Yeah, no, exactly. We are 100%. Yeah. And again, we're sort of splitting hairs. This is why I think it's such a great thing to talk about our favourites and our non-favourites, because we are all fans of the series as on the whole. Like, I am never, this is why I defended 16 quite so hard when it came out, because I'm not one to condemn what could be someone else's favourite. Do you know? Like, we should all be appreciating them all for different reasons and sort of the things that they brought to it. And I think as well, people often jump on a bandwagon here and they go, I hate 13. 13's the shit one, because they've heard that, they've read it among the community, and they've never actually played it. Like, I have played 13. I thought 13, I enjoyed mostly 13. And like I say, maybe if I went back and played it again, I mean, now it's been, 30? I think it's been 13 years actually since I played 13.
Yeah, so 2009 it came out.
Yeah,
so it's nearly
2009.
16 years.
So it's been fucking hell. So that's a long time. So maybe if I played it again, there would be, I must admit, it's hilarious how many times in video games, in Final Fantasy, a couple will kiss in front of fireworks. I feel like that's a thing that just, they love it. They absolutely love having a big kiss in front of fireworks. But I thought the music was like okay in it as well. Like, yeah, but Snow can get in the bin. I'm glad we all agree that Snow was just a little bit.
Very big bin.
Very big, wide bin. Yes.
So I think the perfect way to actually close this segment out is, like you, I played 13 on launch, actually. I was there in central London when they were doing their big release in HMV.
Oh, nice. Queued up.
I've talked about this previously, and there is footage of me, because I was invited up on stage, and I was dressed as Rinoa at that time, so...
Oh, it comes around full circle. Woo!
I think that's probably a great place to start wrapping things up. As we've done previously with Alleyway Jack and with Game Dub as well, we do have a short quiz for you, if you're still up for that.
Absolutely, I am. I've been so excited for the quiz. Let's go for it.
Cool. Fantastic. All right, do you want me to do the first one? Or we're going to try and do our best silly voices of whatever we can to try and disguise it?
Yeah, go on. I think that's probably best.
I'll take the first one. We'll try and be relatively easy to start.
Before we get into it, for those who haven't listened to those previous episodes and don't know, we're going to be doing a very quick Who Said It quiz. This is going to be all quotes from Final Fantasy X. All we're going to do is read out a short line and you have to guess who said it. Jack, take it away.
Number 1. I know it sounds selfish, but this is my story.
Oh, that's Tidus.
Yeah.
Yes,
Ding,
it is.
ding.
Number 2. You would oppose me as well? So be it.
That is, oh my god. It's either Unalesca or Seymour. I'm going to go Seymour.
Ding, ding, ding.
Do you know what it is?
Do you know what the conditions for that are?
Someone turns on him, don't they? Do you use an Aeon against him? Yep. Do you use Anima v Anima?
Correct.
Oh my
I'm going to give you an extra half point for that one.
Oh my god, you got the hard question. Like,
Some actual information that I really need to know as part of my real world human life has left my head. Oh my god. Yeah, because you obviously use it against him. Oh, I love Anima. I really wanted a tattoo of Anima when I was a kid, and I'm glad I didn't, because it's gnarly as heck. And my mum would have been like, what the fuck? But yeah. Amazing. Great question, Mol.
3. These aren't going to be like this. These voices might not be similar to the voice. So, once Lady Yuna fixes her hair, we leave.
Oh my god. Well, someone who called her Lady Yuna would probably not be one of the party. I don't know. Seymour?
Is that your final answer?
I know it's not right. Oh no. Yeah, we'll go Seymour.
I'm afraid that one's incorrect. That one is
who was it?
Auron.
It's Auron. Oh, fixes her hair, we leave. Oh my gosh, I can't remember him saying that.
That one is just outside of Jose Temple.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right, number 4 then. I wish I could live in a place like this. Peaceful, living with a smile on my face every day.
Una.
Correct. Do you know where for an extra half point?
Is it... I feel like it's somewhere like Marcolania?
I'm afraid that one's not right. It's the Mihan High Road.
Mihan High Road, okay.
Right, final one. Easy, kiddo. Bevel's defenses are top notch.
Oh, that's Sid.
There we go.
I thought that was too hard.
Yeah, that's definitely Sid, because they're on the airship, aren't they? And they're trying to get
Indeed.
to Una. Yeah. Woo! How many did I get?
4.5 points out of 5.
Way!
Wonderful.
That was really
I'm glad
good.
you got the anima bit there. That was amazing. I thought you would.
Yeah, I was thinking about it and I was like, I know it's Seymour because I remember the fight. Couldn't remember if it was a cutscene or whether it was like during, you know how sometimes they have dialogue during a fight. I was really, really racking my brain. And then it was only when I really thought about it, and obviously you guys went, what were the conditions for it? I thought, right, it has to be something you trigger. And then I was like, oh my God, it is. Ah, that's awesome.
Power of deduction, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time coming on, Amy. This has been absolutely wonderful to speak to you. And I
Been a
really hope we can do it
absolute
again
delight.
sometime.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So whereabouts can we find you online then?
Okay, so, I mean, I'll be appearing on Future Game Show quite frequently on our TikTok. It's still a thing in the UK, so if you're in the UK and you're listening, you'll probably still be able to access TikTok. But we're on all the things, so Future Game Show has its own YouTube channel, but we're also on TikTok, Blue Sky, X/Twitter. I like calling it Twitter still.
It's still Twitter to us as well.
I know it makes Elon's bum itch if I call it Twitter, so I still
And
will.
that's why we do it.
Instagram, yeah, so Future Game Show is on all of those. And then I am Amy_Mallett or Amy Mallett, MALLETT on everything pretty much as well. So that's my personal stuff.
Excellent. Regular listeners will know that, as usual, I can be found at Adramalek on Blue Sky and Twitter, though my social media presence has been very sparing as of late because I'm just so fucking busy. And obviously, EXP Required is on YouTube, Spotify, Twitter, Blue Sky, under EXP Required or EXP Podcast. Jack, what about yourself?
I am a Jackie Boy 34 on Blue Sky, and I'm also occasionally on Twitter, but only really answer messages on there as Jack Mullen 8, and also the same places Mor's just said there as well, like YouTube for EXP Required. So, thank you very much for joining, Amy, and
Thank
see
you,
you
guys.
again.
Yes, thank
see
you.
you, everyone. Ta-ra. Bye.
Bye.